Random House Audiobooks presents The Maltese Falcon, written by Dashiell Hammett, read for you by Tony Roberts.
The Maltese Falcon. Samuel Spade's jaw was long and bony, his chin a jutting V under the more flexible V of his mouth. His nostrils curved back to make another, smaller V. His yellow-gray eyes were horizontal. The V motif was picked up again by thickish brows rising outward from twin creases above a hooked nose, and his pale brown hair grew down from high flat temples in a point on his forehead. He looked rather pleasantly like a blonde Satan. His secretary, Effie Perrine, opened the inner door of his office. She was a lanky, sunburned girl whose tan dress of thin woolen stuff clung to her with an effect of dampness. Her eyes were brown and playful in a shiny, boyish face. She finished shutting the door behind her and leaned against it. "There's a girl wants to see you," she said. "Her name's Wonderly." "A customer?" "I guess so. You'll want to see her anyway. She's a knockout." "Shoo her in, darling," said Spade. "Shoo her in." Effie Perrine opened the door again, following it back into the outer office, standing with a hand on the knob while saying, "Will you come in, Miss Wonderly?" A voice said, "Thank you," so softly that only the purest articulation made the words intelligible, and a young woman came through the doorway. She advanced slowly, with tentative steps, looking at Spade with cobalt-blue eyes that were both shy and probing. She was tall and pliantly slender, without angularity anywhere. Her body was erect and high-breasted, her legs long, her hands and feet narrow. She wore 2 shades of blue that had been selected because of her eyes. The hair curling from under her blue hat was darkly red, her full lips more brightly red. White teeth glistened in the crescent her timid smile made. Spade rose, bowing and indicating with a thick-fingered hand the oaken armchair beside his desk. He was quite 6 feet tall. The steep, rounded slope of his shoulder made his body seem almost conical, no broader than it was thick, and kept his freshly pressed gray coat from fitting very well. Spade rocked back in his chair and asked, "Now what can I do for you, Miss Wonderly?" She caught her breath and looked at him. She swallowed and said hurriedly, "Could you... that is..." Then she tortured her lower lip with glistening teeth and said nothing. Only her dark eyes spoke now, pleading. Spade smiled and nodded as if he understood her, but pleasantly, as if nothing serious were involved. He said, "Suppose you tell me about it from the beginning, and then we'll know what needs doing. Better begin as far back as you can." "That was in New York." "Yes." "I don't know where she met him. I don't know where in New York. She's 5 years younger than I, only 17, and we didn't have the same friends. I don't suppose we've ever been as close as sisters should be. Mama and Papa are in Europe. It would kill them. I've got to get her back before they come home." "Yes," he said. "They're coming home the 1st of the month." Spade's eyes brightened. "Then we've 2 weeks," he said. I didn't know what she had done until her letter came. I was frantic. Her lips trembled. Her hands mashed the dark handbag in her lap. I was too afraid she had done something like this to go to the police, and the fear that something had happened to her kept urging me to go. There wasn't anyone I could go to for advice. I didn't know what to do. What could I do? "Nothing, of course," Spade said. "But then her letter came." "Yes, and I sent her a telegram asking her to come home. I sent it to general delivery here. That was the only address she gave me. I waited a whole week, but no answer came, not another word from her. And Mama and Papa's return was drawing nearer and nearer, so I came to San Francisco to get her. I wrote her I was coming. I shouldn't have done that, should I?" "Maybe not," It's not always easy to know what to do. You haven't found her? No, I haven't. I wrote her that I would go to the St. Mark, and I begged her to come and let me talk to her, even if she didn't intend to go home with me. But she didn't come. I waited 3 days and she didn't come. Didn't even send me a message. Spade looked sympathetic. It was horrible, Miss Wonderly said, trying to smile. I couldn't sit there like that, waiting, not knowing what had happened to her, what might be happening to her. She shuddered. The only address I had was general delivery. Yesterday afternoon I went to the post office. I stayed there until after dark, but I didn't see her. I went there again this morning and still didn't see Corinne. But I saw Floyd Thursby. Spade nodded again. His frown went away. In its place came a look of sharp attentiveness. He wouldn't tell me where Corinne was, she went on hopelessly. He wouldn't tell me anything except that she was well and happy. But how can I believe that? That is what he would tell me anyhow, isn't it? Sure, Spade agreed. But it might be true. She continued. He promised to tell her he had seen me, and to bring her to see me if she would come this evening at the hotel. He said he knew she wouldn't. He promised to come himself if she wouldn't. She broke off with a startled hand to her mouth as the door opened. The man who had opened the door came in a step, said, "Oh, excuse me," hastily took his brown hat from his head and backed out. "It's all right, Miles," Spade told him. "Come in. Miss Wonderly, this is Mr. Archer, my partner." Miles Archer came into the office again, shutting the door behind him, ducking his head and smiling at Miss Wonderly, making a vaguely polite gesture with the hat in his hand. Spade said, "Miss Wonderly's sister ran away from New York with a fellow named Floyd Thursby. They're here. Miss Wonderly has seen Thursby and has a date with him tonight. Maybe he'll bring the sister with him. The chances are he won't. Miss Wonderly wants us to find the sister and get her away from him and back home." He looked at Miss Wonderly. "Right?" "Yes," she said indistinctly. Spade winked at his partner. Miles Archer came forward to stand at a corner of the desk. While the girl looked at her bag, he looked at her. His little brown eyes ran their bold, appraising gaze from her lowered face to her feet and up to her face again. Then he looked at Spade and made a silent whistling mouth of appreciation. "We shouldn't have any trouble with it," Spade said. "It's simply a matter of having a man at the hotel this evening to shadow him away when he leaves, and shadow him until he leads us to your sister. If she comes with him and you persuade her to return with you, so much the better. Otherwise, if she doesn't want to leave him after we found her, well, we'll find a way of managing that." Miss Wonderly looked up at Spade quickly, puckering her forehead between her eyebrows. "Oh, but you must be careful." Her voice shook a little, and her lips shaped the words with nervous jerkiness. "I'm deathly afraid of him, of what he might do. She's so young, and his bringing her here from New York is such a serious... Mightn't he do something to her?" Spade smiled and patted the arms of his chair. "Just leave that to us," he said. "We'll know how to handle him." "But mightn't he?" she insisted. "There's always the chance," Spade nodded judicially. "But you can trust us to take care of that." "I do trust you," she said earnestly, "but I want you to know that he's a dangerous man. I honestly don't think he'd stop at anything. I don't believe he'd hesitate to kill Corinne if he thought it would save him. Mightn't he do that?" "You didn't threaten him, did you?" "I told him that all I wanted was to get her home before Mama and Papa came so they'd never know what she had done. I promised him I'd never say a word to them about it if he helped me. I don't suppose he believed me altogether." Spade leaned forward to reach for pencil and pad of paper. "What does he look like?" "Oh, he's 35 years old, perhaps, and as tall as you, and either naturally dark or quite sunburned. His hair is dark, too, and he has thick eyebrows. He talks in a rather loud, blustery way, and he has a nervous, irritable manner. He gives the impression of of violence." "What does he do for a living?" Spade asked as he laid down the pencil.
"I don't know," she said. "I haven't the slightest idea."
"What time is he coming to see you?"
"After 8 o'clock.
"All right, Miss Wonderly, we'll have a man there."
"Mr. Spade, could either you or Mr. Archer—" She made an appealing gesture with both hands. "Could either of you look after it personally? I don't mean that the man you'd send wouldn't be capable, but... I'm so afraid of what might happen to Corinne. I'm afraid of him. Could you? I'd expect to be charged more, of course." She opened her handbag with nervous fingers and put $200 bills on Spade's desk. Would that be enough? Yes, Archer said, and I'll look after it myself. Miss Wonderly stood up, impulsively holding a hand out to him. Thank you, she exclaimed, and then gave Spade her hand, repeating, thank you. Not at all, Spade said over it. Glad to. It'll help if you either meet Thursby downstairs or let yourself be seen in the lobby with him at some time. I will, she promised, and thanked the partners again. And don't look for me, Archer cautioned her. I'll see you all right. Spade went to the corridor door with Miss Wonderly. When he returned to his desk, Archer nodded at the $100 bills there, growled complacently, well, they're right enough, picked one up, folded it, and tucked it into a vest pocket. And they had brothers in her bag. Spade pocketed the other bill before he sat down. Then he said, well, don't dynamite her too much. What do you think of her? Sweet. And you telling me not to dynamite her. Archer guffawed suddenly without merriment. Maybe you saw her first, Sam, but I spoke first. He put his hands in his trousers pockets and teetered on his heels. You'll play hell with her, you will. Spade grinned wolfishly, showing the edges of teeth far back in his jaw. You've got brains. Yes, you have. He began to make a cigarette. A telephone rang in darkness. When it had rung 3 times, bed springs creaked, fingers fumbled on wood, something small and hard thudded on a carpeted floor, the springs creaked again, and a man's voice said, Hell. Yes, speaking. Dead? Yes. 15 minutes. Thanks. Spade scratched the back of his neck and began to dress. He picked up the telephone, called Greystone 4500, and ordered a taxicab. Where Bush Street roofed Stockton before slipping downhill to Chinatown, Spade paid his fare and left the taxicab. San Francisco's night fog, thin, clammy, and penetrant, blurred the street. A few yards from where Spade had dismissed the taxicab, a small group of men stood looking at the alley. There were faces in the windows. Spade turned and walked up Bush Street to the alley where men were grouped. Halfway up it, not far from the entrance, a dark ambulance stood. Not far from it, Miles Archer lay on his back. 2 men stood over him. One of them held the beam of an electric torch on the dead man. Other men with lights moved up and down the slope. One of them hailed Spade. "Hello, Sam," he said. "I figured you'd want to see it before we took him away." "Thanks, Tom," Spade said. "What happened?" Tom Polhouse poked his own left breast with a dirty finger. "Got him right through the pump. With this." He took a fat revolver from his coat pocket and held it out to Spade. Mud inlaid the depressions in the revolver's surface. "A Webley, ain't it?" Spade took his elbow from the fence post and leaned down to look at the weapon, but he did not touch it. "Yes," he said. "Webley Fosbury automatic revolver, that's it. 38, 8-shot. They don't make 'em anymore. How many gone out of it?" "1 pill." Tom poked his breast again. "He must have been dead when he cracked the fence." He raised the muddy revolver. "Ever seen this before?" Spade nodded. "I've seen Webley Fosbury's," he said without interest. "Well, that's it?" "That's it," Tom replied slowly, working his brows together. "The blast burnt his coat." He turned and put a leg over the fence. "Coming down for a look at him before he's moved?" asked Polhouse. Spade said, "No." Tom halted astride the fence and looked back at Spade with surprised eyes. Spade said, "You've seen him? You'd see everything I could." Tom looked at Spade, nodding doubtfully. "His gun was tucked away on his hip," he said. "It hadn't been fired. His overcoat was buttoned. There's $160-some in his clothes. Was he working, Sam?" Spade, after a moment's hesitation, nodded. Tom asked, "Well?" "He was supposed to be tailing a fellow named Floyd Thursby," Spade said, and described Thursby as Miss Wonderly had described him. "What for?" Spade put his hands into his overcoat pockets and blinked sleepy eyes at Tom. Tom repeated impatiently, "What for?" "He was an Englishman, maybe. I don't know what his game was exactly. We were trying to find out where he lived. Spade grinned faintly and took a hand from his pocket to pat Tom's shoulder. Don't crowd me. I'm going out to break the news to Miles's wife. He turned away. Tom spoke with a husky sort of gentleness. It's tough, him getting it like that. Miles had his faults, same as the rest of us, but I guess he must have had some good points, too. I guess so. Spade agreed in a tone that was utterly meaningless and went out of the alley. In an all-night drugstore on the corner of Bush and Taylor Streets, Spade used the telephone. Precious, he said into it a little while after he had given a number. Miles has been shot. Yes, he's dead. And now don't get excited. Yes, you'll have to break it to Iva. No, I'm damned if I will. You've got to do it. Now, that's a good girl. And keep her away from the office. Tell her I'll see her, sometime. Yes, but don't tie me up to anything. Yeah, that's the stuff. You're an angel. Bye.
Spade returned to his apartment and was visited by Detective Tom Polhouse and Lieutenant Dundee.
Spade brought 2 wine glasses in from the kitchen, filled them and his own with Bacardi, gave one to each of his visitors, and sat down with his on the side of the bed. His face was placid and uncurious. Tom moved uncomfortably on the sofa and did not look up. Did you break the news to Miles's wife, Sam? Spade said, uh-huh. How'd she take it? Spade shook his head. I don't know anything about women. Tom said softly, the hell you don't. The lieutenant put his hands on his knees and leaned forward. What kind of gun do you carry? He asked. None. I don't like them much. Of course, there are some in the office. I'd like to see one of them, the lieutenant said. You don't happen to have one here? No. You sure of that? Look around. Spade smiled and waved his empty glass a little. Turn the dump upside down if you want. I won't squawk. If you've got a search warrant. Tom protested. Oh, hell, Sam. Spade set his glass on the table and stood up facing the lieutenant. What do you want, Dundee? He asked in a voice hard and cold as his eyes. Who's Thursby? Dundee demanded. I told Tom what I knew about him. You told Tom damn little. I knew damn little. Well, why were you tailing him? I wasn't. Miles was. For the swell reason that we had a client who was paying good United States money to have him tailed. Who's the client? Spade said reprovingly. You know I can't tell you that until I've talked it over with the client. You'll tell me or you'll tell it in court, Dundee said hotly. This is murder and don't you forget it. Maybe. And here's something for you not to forget, sweetheart. I'll tell it or not as I damn please. It's a long while since I burst out crying because policemen didn't like me. Dundee jumped up and tapped Spade's chest with the ends of 2 bent fingers. Thursby was shot in front of his hotel 35 minutes after you left Burrett Street, he said. Spade spoke, taking equal pains with his words. Keep your damned paws off me. Dundee withdrew the tapping fingers, but there was no change in his voice. Tom says you were in too much of a hurry to even stop for a look at your partner. Tom growled apologetically. Well, damn it, Sam, you did run off like that. And you didn't go to Archer's house to tell his wife, the lieutenant said. We called up and that girl in your office was there and she said you sent her. Spade nodded. His face was stupid in its calmness. Thursby die? He asked. While the lieutenant hesitated, Tom said, Yes. Then the lieutenant said angrily, And you might just as well know it, if you don't, that he died before he could tell anybody anything.
Dundee recounted how Thursby was shot 4 times in the back with a .44 or .45 as he started to go into the hotel. He was wearing a Luger in a shoulder holster and it hadn't been fired. Spade coolly insisted that he had never seen Thursby dead or alive. Dundee wasn't satisfied. His suspicion that Spade had a motive for killing Thursby persisted. They finally shook hands ceremoniously. Spade let them out, turned off the lights, and went to bed. Iva, Miles Archer's widow, called on Spade the following morning.
She was a blonde woman of a few more years than 30. Her facial prettiness was perhaps 5 years past its best moments. Her body, for all its sturdiness, was finely modeled and exquisite. She wore black clothes from hat to shoes. They had, as mourning, an impromptu air. Having spoken, she stepped back from the door and stood waiting for Spade. He took her into the inner office, shutting the door. He stroked her round back, saying, "Poor darling." His eyes, squinting at the desk that had been his partner's across the room from his own, were angry. "Did you send for Miles's brother?" he asked. "Yes, he came over this morning." The words were blurred by her sobbing and his coat against her mouth. The woman stirred in his arms and raised her face again. Her blue eyes were wet, round, and white-ringed. Her mouth was moist. "Oh, Sam," she moaned. "Did you kill him?" Spade stared at her with bulging eyes. His bony jaw fell down. He took his arms from her and stepped back. He scowled at her and cleared his throat. "Who," he asked coldly, "put that bright idea in your head?" "I thought... Be kind to me, Sam," she said humbly. He laughed at her, his eyes still glittering. "You killed my husband, Sam. Be kind to me." He clapped his palms together and said, "Jesus Christ." She began to cry audibly, holding a white handkerchief to her face. He got up and stood close behind her. He put his arms around her. He kissed her neck between ear and coat collar. He said, "Now, Iva, don't. You shouldn't have come here today, precious. It wasn't wise. You can't stay. You ought to be home." She turned around in his arms to face him and asked, "You'll come tonight?" He shook his head gently. "Not tonight." "Soon?" "Yes." "How soon?" "As soon as I can." He kissed her mouth, led her to the door, and said, "Goodbye, Iva." Spade took tobacco and cigarette papers from his vest pockets, but did not roll a cigarette. He sat holding the papers in one hand, the tobacco in the other, and looked with brooding eyes at his dead partner's desk. Effie Perrine opened the door and came in. "Well," she asked, "how did you and the widow make out?" "She thinks I shot Miles," he said. Only his lips moved. "So you could marry her?" Spade made no reply to that. "Do you suppose she could have killed him?" Spade sat up straight and took his arm from her waist. He smiled at her. "You're an angel," he said tenderly through smoke. "A nice, rattle-brained angel." She smiled a bit wryly. "Oh, am I? Suppose I told you that your Iva hadn't been home many minutes when I arrived to break the news at 3 o'clock this morning? She kept me waiting at the door while she undressed, or finished undressing. I saw her clothes where she had dumped them on a chair. Her hat and coat were underneath. Her singlet on top was still warm. She said she'd been asleep, but she hadn't. She had wrinkled up the bed, but the wrinkles weren't mashed down." Spade took the girl's hand and patted it. "You're a detective, darling, but..." He shook his head. "She didn't kill him." Effie Perrine snatched her hand away. "That louse wants to marry you, Sam," she said bitterly. "You worry me. You always think you know what you're doing, but you're too slick for your own good, and someday you're going to find it out." He sighed mockingly and rubbed his cheek against her arm. "That's what Dundee says, but you keep Iva away from me, sweet, and I'll manage to survive the rest of my troubles. Oh, and have the Spade and Archer taken off the door and Samuel Spade put on. I'll be back in an hour or I'll phone you."
Spade went to the St. Mark's Hotel to find that Miss Wonderly had checked out. She had arrived last Tuesday from New York. There were no phone calls charged to her room, and she received no mail. The only person seen with her was a tall, dark man in his mid-30s. She left alone in a hired touring car, and her forwarding address was listed as the Ambassador in Los Angeles. However, on his return to his office, Effie informed Spade that Miss Wonderly called, was staying at the Coronet on California Street, apartment 1001, and that she wanted him to call her, and to ask for Miss LeBlanc. Moments later at the Coronet, Miss Wonderly greeted the detective with a faint smile.
"Mr. Spade," she said, "I've a terrible, terrible confession to make." Spade smiled a polite smile, which she did not lift her eyes to see, and said nothing. That story I told you yesterday was all a story," she stammered and looked up at him now with miserable, frightened eyes. "Oh, that," Spade said lightly. "Well, we didn't exactly believe your story." Then perplexity was added to the misery and fright in her eyes. "We believed you $200. You mean... She seemed to not know what he meant. I mean that you paid us more than if you'd been telling the truth, he explained blandly, and enough more to make it all right. Her eyes suddenly lighted up. And even now you'd be willing to... Well, that depends, he said. The hell of it is, Miss, is your name Wonderly or LeBlanc? She blushed and murmured, It's really O'Shaughnessy. Bridget O'Shaughnessy. The hell of it is, Miss O'Shaughnessy, that a couple of murders, she winced, coming together like this, get everybody stirred up, make the police think they can go the limit, make everybody hard to handle and expensive. It's not... He stopped talking because she stopped listening and was waiting for him to finish. Mr. Spade, tell me the truth. Her voice quivered on the verge of hysteria. Her face had become haggard around desperate eyes. Am I to blame for last night? Not unless there are things I don't know about, he said. You warned us that Thursby was dangerous. Of course, you lied to us about your sister and all, but that doesn't count. We didn't believe you. I wouldn't say it was your fault. She said, Thank you, very softly, and then moved her head from side to side. But I'll always blame myself. Mr. Archer was so alive yesterday afternoon, so solid and hearty, and... Stop it, Spade commanded. He knew what he was doing. They're the chances we take. Was he married? Yes, with 10,000 insurance, no children, and a wife who didn't like him. Oh, please don't, she whispered. She squirmed on her end of the settee, and her eyes wavered between heavy lashes as if trying and failing to free their gaze from his.
She went down on her knees at his knees. She held her face up to him. She said she hadn't lived a good life, that she'd been bad, but not all that bad. She begged Spade to shield her from the police. She pleaded with him, asking him to trust her, even if she had no right to be trusted. She was desperate and afraid. Would he help her, she begged.
Spade, who had held his breath through much of her speech, emptied his lungs with a long, sighing exhalation. He said, You won't need much of anybody's help. You're good. You're very good. It's chiefly your eyes, I think, and that throb you get into your voice when you say things like, Be generous, Mr. Spade. She jumped up on her feet. Her face crimsoned painfully, but she held her head erect and she looked Spade straight in the eyes. I deserve that, she said. I deserve it, but... Oh, I did want your help so much. And the lie was in the way I said it, and not in all in what I said. It is my own fault that you can't believe me now. Spade's face reddened, and he looked down at the floor, muttering, Now you are dangerous.
Spade asked her what happened the night of the murders. She told him Floyd Thursby came to her hotel at 9 o'clock, and they had dinner and came back to the St. Mark at 12:30. When Thursby left her at the hotel, she watched Miles Archer follow him. After they had gone, she went to bed, and at breakfast saw the headlines about the murders. Later, when she found her room had been searched, she moved to the Coronet.
I've got nothing against trusting you blindly, said Spade, except that I won't be able to do you much good if I haven't some idea of what it's all about. For instance, I've got to have some sort of line on your Floyd Thursby. I met him in the Orient. We came here from Hong Kong last week. He'd promised to help me. He took advantage of my helplessness and dependence on him to betray me. Betray you how? She shook her head and said nothing. Spade, frowning with impatience, asked, Why did you want him shadowed? I wanted to learn how far he had gone. He wouldn't even let me know where he was staying. I wanted to find out what he was doing, whom he was meeting, things like that. Did he kill Archer? She looked up at him, surprised. Yes, certainly, she said. He had a Luger in a shoulder holster, Spade said. Archer wasn't shot with a Luger. He had a revolver in his overcoat pocket, she said. You saw it? Oh, I've seen it often. I know he always carries one there. I didn't see it last night, but I know he never wears an overcoat without it. You picked a nice sort of playmate. Only that sort could have helped me, she said simply. If he'd been loyal. He looked at his watch. The day's going and you're giving me nothing to work with. Who killed Thursby? She put a crumpled handkerchief to her mouth and said, I don't know, through it. Spade stood up, thrust his hands into the pockets of his jacket, and scowled down at her. "This is hopeless," he said savagely. "I can't do anything for you. I don't know what you've done. I don't even know if you know what you want." She hung her head and wept. "I thank you for what you've done. I'll have to take my chances." Spade made a growling animal noise in his throat. "How much money have you got?" he asked. The question startled her. "I've about $500 left." "Give it to me." She hesitated, then went to the bedroom, returning with a sheaf of paper money. He took the money from her, counted it, and said, "There's only $400 here." "I had to keep some to live on," she explained meekly. "Can't you get any more?" "No." "Well, you must have something you can raise money on," he insisted. "I've some rings, a little jewelry." "You'll have to hock them. The Remedial's the best place, Mission and 5th.
He left, promising he'd be back shortly. He paid a visit to his lawyer, Sid Wise, to check on his rights if the district attorney started putting him through a legal grind. It was 10 minutes past 5 as he arrived back at his office. Effie Perrine greeted him.
"Anything stirring?" asked Spade. "Not here," replied Effie. "You look like you swallowed the canary." He grinned contentedly. "I think we've got a future. I always had an idea that if Miles would go off and die somewhere, we'd stand a better chance of thriving. Will you take care of sending flowers for me?" "I did." "You're an invaluable angel. How's your woman's intuition today?" "Why?" "What do you think of Wonderly?" "I'm for her," the girl replied without hesitation. "She's got too many names," mused Spade. "Wonderly, LeBlanc. She says the right one's O'Shaughnessy." "I don't care if she's got all the names in the phone book. That girl is all right, and you know it." "I wonder." Sam blinked sleepily at Effie Perrine. He chuckled. "Anyway, she's given up 700 smacks in 2 days, and that's all right." Effie Perrine sat up straight and said, "Sam, if that girl's in trouble and you let her down or take advantage of it to bleed her, I'll never forgive you, never have any respect for you as long as I live." Effie Perrine rose and went into the outer office. Spade took off his hat and sat in the chair. The girl returned with an engraved card. "Mr. Joel Cairo." "The guy is queer," she said to Spade. Mr. Joel Cairo was a small-boned, dark man of medium height. His hair was black and smooth and very glossy. His features were levantine. A square-cut ruby, its sides paralleled by 4 baquette diamonds, gleamed against the deep green of his cravat. His black coat, cut tight to narrow shoulders, flared a little over slightly plump hips. He held a black derby in a chamois-gloved hand and came toward Spade with short, mincing, bobbing steps. The fragrance of chypre came with him. He seated himself at Spade's desk. "May a stranger offer condolences for your partner's unfortunate death?" he purred. "Thanks." "May I ask, Mr. Spade, if there was, as the newspapers inferred, a certain relationship between that unfortunate happening and the death a little later of the man Thursby?" Spade said nothing in a blank-faced, definite way. Cairo rose and bowed. "I beg your pardon. More than idle curiosity made me ask that, Mr. Spade. I'm trying to recover an ornament that has been, shall we say, mislaid. I thought and hoped you could assist me." Spade nodded with eyebrows lifted to indicate attentiveness. "The ornament is a statuette, the black figure of a bird." Spade nodded again with courteous interest. "I am prepared to pay, on behalf of the figure's rightful owner, the sum of $5,000 for its recovery. I am prepared to promise that, what is the phrase, no questions will be asked." "$5,000 is a lot of money," Spade commented, looking thoughtfully at Cairo. Fingers drummed lightly on the door. When Spade had called to come in, the door opened far enough to admit Effie Perrine's head and shoulders. She had put on a small, dark felt hat and a dark coat with a gray fur collar. "Is there anything else?" she asked. "No. Good night. Lock the door when you go, will you?" "Good night." she said, and disappeared behind the closing door. Spade turned in his chair to face Cairo again, saying, "It's an interesting figure." The sound of the corridor doors closing behind Effie Perrine came to them. Cairo smiled and took a short, compact, flat black pistol out of an inner pocket. "You will please," he said, "clasp your hands together at the back of your neck." Spade did not look at the pistol. He raised his arms and, leaning back in his chair, intertwined the fingers of his two hands behind his head. His eyes, holding no particular expression, remained focused on Cairo's dark face. Cairo coughed a little apologetic cough and smiled nervously with lips that had lost some of their redness. His dark eyes were humid and bashful and very earnest. "I intend to search your offices, Mr. Spade. I warn you that if you attempt to prevent me, I shall certainly shoot you." "Go ahead." Spade's voice was as empty of expression as his face. "You will please stand?" the man with the pistol instructed him, at whose thick chest the pistol was aimed. "I shall have to make sure that you are not armed."
When Cairo tried to search him, Spade overpowered him, took the gun away, and knocked him out.
Spade lowered the limp body into the chair where it lay with sprawled arms and legs, the head lolling back against the chair's back, the mouth open. Spade emptied the unconscious man's pockets one by one, working methodically, moving the lax body when necessary, making a pile of the pocket's contents on the desk. When the last pocket had been turned out, he rolled and lighted a cigarette and began to examine his spoils. He examined them with his grave, unhurried thoroughness. There was a wallet of dark, soft leather. The wallet contained $365 in United States bills, a much-visaed Greek passport bearing Cairo's name and portrait, paper sheets with Arabic writing, a newspaper clip of the finding of Archer and Thursby's bodies, a sheaf of Mr. Joel Cairo engraved cards, and a ticket for an orchestra seat at the Geary Theater that evening, and 4 sheets of Hotel Belvedere writing paper with Samuel Spade's name and the addresses of his office and his apartment. Cairo presently moaned and fluttered his eyelids. Spade's face became bland, and he put the beginning of a friendly smile into his eyes and mouth. Joel Cairo awakened slowly. He opened his mouth to speak, started, clapped a hand to his face where Spade's fist had struck and where there was now a florid bruise. He spoke through his teeth painfully. "I could have shot you, Mr. Spade," he said. "You could have tried," Spade conceded. "I did not try." "I know." "Then why did you strike me after I was disarmed?" "Sorry," Spade said, and grinned wolfishly, showing his jaw teeth. "But imagine my embarrassment when I found that $5,000 offer was just hooey." "You are mistaken, Mr. Spade. That was and is a genuine offer." Spade thumped Cairo's wallet with the backs of his fingers, withdrew one hand, and said, "There's nothing like $5,000 here. You're betting your eyes. You could come in here and say you'd pay me $1 million for a purple elephant, but what in hell would that mean?" I see, Cairo said thoughtfully. "You wish some assurance of my sincerity." He brushed his red lower lip with a fingertip. "A retainer, would that serve?" "It might." Cairo put a hand out to his wallet. "You will take, say, $100? Spade picked up the wallet and took out $100. Then he frowned and said, "Better make it 200, and did.
Cairo said nothing, only repeated his offer of $5,000 plus expenses for uncovering the Falcon. They agreed Spade was not being hired to involve himself in any murders or burglaries, but to pursue the bird honestly and lawfully. Cairo calmly gathered up his articles, asked for the return of his pistol, then pointed the weapon at Spade's chest.
"You will please keep your hands on the top of the desk," Cairo said earnestly. "I intend to search your offices." Spade said, "I'll be damned." Then he laughed in his throat and said, "All right, go ahead. I won't stop you." For half an hour after Joel Cairo had gone, Spade sat alone, still and frowning at his desk. He thought of his involvement with the Falcon, shrugged and muttered aloud, "Well, they're paying for it," and took a bottle of Manhattan cocktail and a paper drinking cup from a desk drawer. He filled the cup 2/3 full, drank, returned the bottle to the drawer, tossed the cup into the wastebasket, put on his hat and overcoat, turned off the lights, and went down to the night-lit street. An undersized youth of 20 or 21 in neat gray cap and overcoat was standing idly on the corner below Spade's building. Spade walked up Sutter Street to Kearney, where he entered a cigar store to buy 2 sacks of Bull Durham. When he came out, the youth was one of 4 people waiting for a streetcar on the opposite corner. Spade ate dinner at Herbert's Grill in Powell Street. When he left the grill at 7:45, the youth was looking into a nearby haberdasher's window. Spade went to the Hotel Belvedere, asking at the desk for Mr. Cairo. He was told that Cairo was not in. The youth sat in a chair in a far corner of the lobby. Spade went to the Geary Theater, failed to see Cairo in the lobby, and posted himself on the curb in front, facing the theater. The youth loitered with other loiterers before Marquand's restaurant below. At 8:10, Joel Cairo appeared, walking up Geary Street with his little mincing, bobbing steps. Apparently he did not see Spade until the private detective touched his shoulder. He seemed moderately surprised for a moment, and then said, "Oh, yes, of course, you saw the ticket." "Uh-huh. I got something I want to show you. The kid in the cap down by Marquand's." Cairo murmured, "I'll see." He looked up Geary Street until they were both eyeing the kid in the cap with the curling lashes, hiding lowered eyes. "Who is he?" Spade asked. "I do not know him. He's been tailing me around town." Cairo wet his lower lip with his tongue and asked, "Do you think it was wise, then, to let him see us together?" "How do I know?" Spade replied. "Anyway, it's done." "I have to give my word I do not know him, Mr. Spade. I give you my word I have nothing to do with him. I have asked nobody's assistance except yours, on my word of honor." "Then he's one of the others." "That may be." "I just wanted to know, because if he gets to be a nuisance, I may have to hurt him." "Do as you think best. He's not a friend of mine." "Well, there goes the curtain. Good night," Spade said, and crossed the street to board a westbound streetcar. The youth in the cap boarded the same car. Spade left the car at Hyde Street and went to his apartment. His rooms were not greatly upset, but showed unmistakable signs of having been searched. Spade washed, put on a fresh shirt, went out and boarded a westbound car. The youth boarded it also. Within a few blocks of the Coronet, Spade ducked into an apartment building, pressed 3 bell buttons together, found a corridor that led to a back street, and headed undetected to the Coronet. The eagerness with which Bridget O'Shaughnessy welcomed Spade suggested that she had been not entirely certain of his coming. She had put on a satin gown of the blue shade called artoise that season, with chalcedony shoulder straps, and her stockings and slippers were artoise. 3 small, rough-barked logs burned in the fireplace. Spade watched them burn while she put away his hat and coat. He stood beside the fireplace and looked at her with eyes that studied, weighed, judged her without pretense that they were not studying, weighing, judging her. She flushed slightly under the frankness of his scrutiny, but she seemed more sure of herself than before, though a becoming shyness had not left her eyes. He stood there until it seemed plain that he meant to ignore her invitation to sit beside her, and then crossed to the settee. "You aren't," he asked as he sat down, "exactly the sort of person you pretend to be, are you?" "I'm not sure I know what you mean," she said in her hushed voice, looking at him with puzzled eyes. "Schoolgirl manner, stammering and blushing and all that." She blushed and replied hurriedly, not looking at him, "I told you this afternoon that I've been bad. Worse than you could know." "That's what I mean," he said. "You told me that this afternoon in the same words, same tone. It's a speech you've practiced." "Very well, then, Mr. Spade. I'm not at all the sort of person I pretend to be. I'm 80 years old, incredibly wicked, and an iron molder by trade. But if it's a pose, it's one I've grown into, so you won't expect me to drop it entirely, will you?" "Oh, it's all right," he assured her. "Only it wouldn't be all right if you were actually that innocent. We never get anywhere." "I won't be innocent," she promised with a hand on her heart. "I saw Joel Cairo tonight," he said in a manner of making polite conversation. Gaiety went out of her face. Her eyes, focused on his profile, became frightened, then cautious. He had stretched his legs out and was looking at his crossed feet. His face did not indicate that he was thinking about anything. You You know him?" she asked. "I saw him tonight. He was going to the theater." "You mean you talked to him?"
"Only for a minute or two, till the curtain bell rang."
"What did he say?" she asked quietly.
"About what?"
She hesitated. "About me."
"Nothing."
"Well, what did he say?" she asked with half-playful petulance.
"He offered me $5,000 for the black bird."
She stared. Her teeth tore the end of her cigarette, and her eyes, after a swift, alarmed glance at Spade, turned away from him. She began straightening up the room nervously and began poking the fire. "And what did you say?" she asked.
$5,000 is a lot of money.
"Surely you're not really considering it." "It is," she agreed in a small, dull voice. "Far more than I could ever offer you, if I must bid for your loyalty."
Spade laughed. His laughter was brief and somewhat bitter. "That is good," he said, "coming from you. What have you given me besides money? Have you given me any of your confidence, any of the truth, any help in helping you? Haven't you tried to buy my loyalty with money and nothing else? Well, if I'm peddling it, why shouldn't I let it go to the highest bidder?"
"I've given you all the money I have." Tears glistened in her white, ringed eyes. Her voice was hoarse, vibrant. "I've thrown myself on your mercy, told you that without your help I'm utterly lost. What else is there?" She suddenly moved close to him on the settee and cried angrily, "Can I buy you with my body?" Their faces were a few inches apart. Spade took her face between his hands and he kissed her mouth roughly and contemptuously. Then he sat back, his face hard and furious. "I'll think it over," he said. She sat still, holding her numb face where his hands had left it. He stood up and said, "Christ, there's no sense to this." He turned to face her. "I don't give a damn about your honesty. I'm willing to help you. I've done what I could so far. If necessary, I'll go ahead blindfolded, but I can't do it without more confidence in you than I got now." "Can you trust me just a little longer?" "How much is a little, and what are you waiting for?" She bit her lip and looked down. "I must talk to Joel Cairo," she said. "Well, you can see him tonight," Spade said, looking at his watch. "His show will be out soon. We can get him on the phone at the hotel." She raised her eyes, alarmed. "But he can't come here. I can't let him know where I am. I'm afraid." "My place," Spade suggested. She hesitated, then asked, "Do you think he'll go there?" Spade nodded. "All right. Shall we go now?" Their taxicab drew up behind a dark sedan that stood directly in front of Spade's street door. Iva Archer was alone in the sedan, sitting at the wheel. Spade lifted his hat to her and went indoors with Bridget O'Shaughnessy. He excused himself and went out to the sedan. When he had opened the sedan's door, Iva spoke quickly. "I've got to talk to you, Sam. Can I come in?" Her face was pale. "Not now." Iva clicked her teeth together and asked sharply, "Who is she?" "I've only a minute, Iva," Spade said patiently. "What is it?" "Who is she?" she repeated. Spade looked away from her down the street. In front of the garage on the next corner, an undersized youth of 20 or 21 in neat gray cap and overcoat loafed with his back against a wall. Spade frowned and returned his gaze to Iva's insistent face. "What is the matter?" he asked. "Has anything happened? You oughtn't to be here at this time of night." "I'm beginning to believe that," she complained. "You told me I oughtn't to come to the office, and now I oughtn't to come here." "Do you mean I oughtn't to chase after you? If that's what you mean, why don't you say it right out?" "Now, Iva, you've got no right to take that attitude." "I know I haven't. I haven't any rights at all, it seems, when you're concerned. I thought I did. I thought your pretending to love me gave me—" Spade said wearily, "This is no time to be arguing about that, precious. What was it you wanted to see me about?" "I can't talk to you here, Sam. Can't I come in?" "Not now." "Why can't I?" Spade said nothing. She made a thin line of her mouth, squirmed round straight behind the wheel, and started the sedan's engine, staring angrily ahead. When the sedan began to move, Spade said goodnight, shut the door, and stood at the curb with his hat in his hand until it had been driven away.
He went indoors again, where Bridget O'Shaughnessy was waiting, and they went up to his apartment.
In his bedroom that was a living room, now the wall bed was up, Spade took Bridget O'Shaughnessy's hat and coat, made her comfortable in a padded rocking chair, and telephoned the Hotel Belvedere. Cairo had not returned from the theater.
Spade left his telephone number with the request that Cairo call him as soon as he came in. "I don't have to tell you how utterly at a disadvantage you'll have me with him here, if you choose." Spade smiled slightly. "No, you don't have to tell me," he agreed. "And you know I'd never have placed myself in this position if I hadn't trusted you completely." "That again," Spade said in mock resignation. The telephone bell rang. It was Joel Cairo.
Spade gave Cairo his address on Post Street, adding that Miss O'Shaughnessy was there and wanted to see him.
Bridget frowned and left her chair and stood in front of him, close, but did not say anything. She studied his face. Her eyes were wide and deep. Her nostrils quivered. Spade laughed and patted her hand. She turned her hand under his so that her fingers pressed his. "You're a godsend," she said softly. "Don't overdo it," Spade said. She looked reproachfully at him, though smiling, and returned to the padded rocker. Joel Cairo was excited. His dark eyes seemed all irises, and his high-pitched, thin-voiced words were tumbling out before Spade had the door half open. "That boy out there is watching the house, Mr. Spade. That boy you showed me, or to whom you showed me, in front of the theater. What am I to understand from that, Mr. Spade? I came here in good faith, with no thought of tricks." "You were asked in good faith, but I ought to have guessed he might show up. He saw you come in?" "Naturally. I could have gone on, but that seemed useless, since you had already let him see us together." Bridget O'Shaughnessy came into the passageway behind Spade and asked anxiously, "What boy?" Cairo removed his black hat from his head, bowed stiffly, and said in a prim voice, "If you do not know, ask Mr. Spade. I know nothing about it except through him." "A kid who's been trying to tail me around town all evening," Spade said carelessly over his shoulder. "Come on in, Cairo. There's no use standing here talking for all the neighbors." Bridget O'Shaughnessy grasped Spade's arm and demanded, "Did he follow you to my apartment?" "No, I shook him before that. Then I suppose he came back here to try to pick me up again." Cairo, holding his black hat to his belly with both hands, had come into the passageway. Spade shut the corridor door behind him, and they went into the living room. There Cairo bowed stiffly once more before Bridget. "I am delighted to see you again, Miss O'Shaughnessy," he said. "I was sure you would be, Joe," she replied, giving him her hand. He made a formal bow over her hand and released it quickly. Bridget O'Shaughnessy said to Cairo, "Sam told me about your offer for the Falcon. You are ready to give us $5,000 now if we give you the Falcon?" Cairo held up a wriggling hand. "Excuse me," he said. "I expressed myself badly. I did not mean to say that I have the money in my pockets, but that I am prepared to get it on a very few minutes' notice at any time during banking hours." "Oh," she looked at Spade. Spade blew cigarette smoke down the front of his vest and said, "That's probably right. He had only a few hundred in his pockets when I frisked him this afternoon." The Levantine bent forward in his chair anxiously. "I can be quite prepared to give you the money at, say, 10:30 in the morning, huh?" Bridget O'Shaughnessy smiled at him and said, "But I haven't got the Falcon." Cairo's face was darkened by a flush of annoyance. He put an ugly hand on either arm of his chair, holding his small-boned body erect and stiff between them. His dark eyes were angry. "I'll have it in a week at the most, though," said Bridget. "Where is it?" Cairo used politeness of mien to express skepticism. "Where Floyd hid it." "Floyd? Thursby?" She nodded. "And you know where it is?" he asked. "I think I do." "Well, then why must we wait a week?" "Perhaps not a whole week. Whom are you buying it for, Joe?" "I told Mr. Spade. For its owner." Surprise illuminated the girl's face. "So, you went back to him?" "Naturally I did." She laughed softly in her throat and said, "I should have liked to have seen that." "Why," asked Cairo, "if I in turn may ask a question, are you willing to sell to me?" "I'm afraid," she said simply. "After what happened to Floyd, that's why I haven't it now. I'm afraid to touch it except to turn it over to somebody else right away." "Exactly what," Cairo asked in a low voice, "happened to Floyd?" The tip of Bridget O'Shaughnessy's right forefinger traced a swift G in the air. Cairo said, "I see. Is he here?" She spoke impatiently. "I don't know. What difference does it make?" "It might make a world of difference," he said. Cairo, as he spoke, rearranged his hands in his lap so that, intentionally or not, a blunt forefinger pointed at Spade. The girl glanced at the pointing finger and made an impatient motion with her head. "Or me," she said. "Or you." "Exactly," said Cairo. "And shall we add more certainly the boy outside?" "Yes," she agreed and laughed. "Yes, unless he's the one you had in Constantinople." Sudden blood mottled Cairo's face. In a shrill, enraged voice he cried, "The one you couldn't make?" Bridget O'Shaughnessy jumped up from her chair. Her lower lip was between her teeth. Her eyes were dark and wide in a tense white face. She took 2 quick steps toward Cairo. He started to rise. Her right hand went out and cracked sharply against his cheek, leaving the imprint of fingers there. Cairo grunted and slapped her cheek, staggering her sidewise, bringing from her mouth a brief, muffled scream. Spade, wooden of face, was up from the sofa and close to them by then. He caught Cairo by the throat and shook him. Cairo gurgled and put a hand inside his coat. Spade grasped the Levantine's wrist, wrenched it away from the coat, forced it straight out to the side, and twisted it until the clumsy, flaccid fingers opened to let the black pistol fall down on the rug. Bridget O'Shaughnessy quickly picked up the pistol. Cairo spoke with difficulty because of the fingers on his throat. "This is the second time you've put hands on me," he said menacingly. "Yes," Spade growled, "and when you're slapped, you'll take it and like it." He released Cairo's wrist and with a thick, open hand struck the side of his face 3 times, savagely. Cairo tried to spit in Spade's face, but the dryness of the Levantine's mouth made it only an angry gesture. Spade slapped the mouth, cutting the lower lip. The doorbell rang. Cairo's eyes jerked into focus on the passageway that led to the corridor door. His eyes had become unangry and wary. The girl had gasped and turned to face the passageway. Her face was frightened. Spade stared gloomily for a moment at the blood trickling from Cairo's lip and then stepped back, taking his hand from the Levantine's throat. "Who is it?" the girl whispered, and coming close to Spade, and Cairo's eyes jerked back to ask the same question. Spade gave his answer irritably. "I don't know." The bell rang again, more insistently. "Well, keep quiet," Spade said and went out of the room, shutting the door behind him. Spade turned on the light in the passageway and opened the door to the corridor. Lieutenant Dundee and Polehouse were there. "Hello, Sam," Tom said. "We thought maybe you wouldn't have gone to bed yet." Dundee nodded but said nothing. Spade said good-naturedly, "Hello. You guys pick swell hours to do your visiting in. What is it this time?" "We want to talk to you," said Dundee. Spade stood in the doorway and said, "You can't come in."
Dundee was harsh with Spade. He said there was talk going around that Archer's wife had been cheating on him, and that Spade was the man. Spade laughed it off. Dundee told Spade he was a liar.
"There's even talk," Dundee went on stolidly, that's why he was put on the spot." "Don't be a hog," Spade said. "You oughtn't to try to pin more than one murder at a time on me. Your first idea that I knocked Thursby off because he killed Miles falls apart if you blame me for killing Miles, too." A voice in Spade's living room screamed, "Help! Help! Police! Help!" The voice, high and thin and shrill, was Joel Cairo's. Lieutenant Dundee pushed his way in. The sounds of a brief struggle, of a blow, of a subdued cry, came to the police officers. When they entered, Spade shut the corridor door and followed them back to the living room. Bridget O'Shaughnessy was huddled in the armchair by the table. Joel Cairo stood in front of her, bending over her, holding in one hand the pistol Spade had twisted out of his hand. Cairo was glaring at the girl, huddled in front of him. Dundee, the first of the 3 into the living room, moved swiftly to Cairo's side, put a hand on his own hip under his overcoat and a hand on the Levantine's wrist. "What are you up to here?" he growled. Cairo took the red-smeared hand from his head and flourished it close to the lieutenant's face. Uncovered by the hand, his forehead showed a 3-inch ragged tear. This is what she has done, he cried. Did you do that? Dundee asked the girl, nodding at Cairo's cut head. I had to, she said. I couldn't. I tried to keep him off. I wouldn't make myself shoot him. Oh, you liar, Cairo cried. Oh, you dirty, filthy liar. She's lying awfully. I came here in good faith and was attacked by both of them, and when you came, he went out to talk to you, leaving her here with this pistol. And then she said they were going to kill me after you left, and I called for help so you wouldn't leave me here to be murdered, and then she struck me with the pistol. Here, give me this thing, Dundee said, and took the pistol from Cairo's hand. Well, Tom, he said to Polhouse, I don't guess we'll go wrong pulling the lot of them in. I dare you to take us in, Dundee, he said. We'll laugh at you in every newspaper in San Francisco. You don't think any of us is going to swear to any complaints against the others, do you? Wake up, you've been kidded. When the bell rang, I said to Miss O'Shaughnessy and Cairo, it's those damn bulls again. They're getting to be nuisances. Let's play a joke on them. When you hear them going, one of you scream, and then we'll see how far we can string them along before they tumble. And Bridget O'Shaughnessy bent forward in her chair and began to laugh hysterically. Cairo started and smiled. There was no vitality in his smile, but he held it fixed. Tom glowered and grumbled for Sam to cut it out. Dundee was scornful. Yeah, and the cut on his head and mouth, where'd they come from? He asked. Ask him, Spade suggested. Maybe he cut himself shaving. Cairo spoke quickly. I fell, he said. We intended to be struggling for the pistol when you came in, but I fell. I tripped on the end of the rug and fell while we were pretending to struggle. Dundee said, Horse feathers. Spade said, That's all right, Dundee. Believe it or not. The point is that's our story, and we'll stick to it. The newspapers will print it, whether they believe it or not, and it'll just be as funny one way as the other, or more so. What are you going to do about it? It's no crime to kid a copper, is it? You haven't got anything on anybody here. Everything we told you was part of the joke. What are you going to do about it? Dundee pulled Cairo roughly around, holding him now by one wrist and the nape of his neck. I'll take you along for packing the gun anyway, he said. And I'll take the rest of you along to see who laughs at the joke. Cairo's alarmed eyes jerked sidewise to focus on Spade's face. Spade said, Don't be a sap, Dundee. The gun was part of the plant. It's one of mine. He laughed. Too bad it's only a .32, or maybe you could find it was the one Thursby and Miles were shot with. Dundee released Cairo, spun on his heel, and his right fist clicked on Spade's chin. Bridget O'Shaughnessy uttered a short cry. Spade's smile flickered out at the instant of the impact, but returned immediately with a dreamy quality added. He steadied himself with a short backward step, and his thick sloping shoulders writhed under his coat. Before his fist could come up, Tom Polhouse had pushed himself between the two men, facing Spade, encumbering Spade's arms with the closeness of his barrel-like belly and his own arms. No, no, Tom begged. Then get him out of here, quick, Spade said. His smile had gone away again, leaving his face sullen and somewhat pale. Dundee had Tom get the addresses of both Cairo and Miss O'Shaughnessy. Spade, his eyes hard and glittering, buttoned his coat and turned to Dundee, asking, in a voice that aped casualness, Well, is that all? Dundee's scowl failed to conceal indecision. Spade went to the closet in the passageway and fetched Cairo's hat and coat. His face was blank. His voice held the same blankness when he stepped back from helping the Levantine into his coat. Dundee took Cairo's pistol from his overcoat pocket and put it on the table. Tom's muttering, I hope to God you know what you're doing, got no response from Spade. The three of them, Dundee, Polhouse, and Cairo, disappeared down the hallway. Spade returned to the living room and sat on an end of the sofa, elbows on knees, cheeks in hand, looking at the floor and not at Bridget O'Shaughnessy. She regarded him with growing uneasiness. Red rage came suddenly into his face, and he began to talk in a harsh, guttural voice. He cursed Dundee for 5 minutes without break, cursed him obscene, blasphemously, repetitiously. Then he took his face out of his hands, looked at the girl, and grinned sheepishly. Childish, huh? He said. I know, but by God, I do hate being hit without hitting back. He touched his chin with careful fingers. Not that it was so much of a sock at that. He laughed and lounged back on the sofa, crossing his legs. A cheap enough price to pay for winning, though I'll remember it. The girl, smiling again, sat on the sofa beside him. "You're absolutely the wildest person I have ever known," she said. "Do you always carry on so high-handed?"
I let him hit me, didn't I?
"Oh, yes, but a police official."
It wasn't that, Spade explained. It was that in losing his head and slugging me, he overplayed his hand. If I'd mixed it with him, then he couldn't have backed down. He'd have had to go through with it, and we'd have had to tell that goofy story at headquarters. What did you do to Cairo?
"Nothing." Her face became flushed. "I tried to frighten him into keeping still until they had gone, and he either got too frightened or stubborn and yelled."
And then you smacked him with the gut.
"I had to. He attacked me."
Spade took tobacco and papers from his pockets and began to make a cigarette. Now you've had your talk with Cairo, now you can talk to me.
Spade put an arm across her back, cupping his hand over the smooth, bare, white shoulder farthest from him. She leaned back into the bend of his arm.
"Well, I'm listening," he said.
"Look at the time," she exclaimed, wriggling a finger at the alarm clock perched atop the book.
"Oh, no you don't," said Spade with a smile.
"Am I a prisoner?" she asked gaily.
"You can start now," he said.
She made a face at him, complained. "You're the most insistent person."
"Yes, and wild and unpredictable. What's this bird, this falcon that everybody's all steamed up about?"
"Suppose I wouldn't tell you. Suppose I wouldn't tell you anything at all about it. What would you do?"
"You mean about the bird?"
"I mean the whole thing," she said. Mockery rippled in a smile on her face. "Something wild and unpredictable?"
"Maybe. But I don't see what you've got to gain by covering up now."
For several minutes they remained silent. He phlegmatically, she thoughtfully. Then she spoke to him in a hushed voice. "I'm afraid of you, and that's the truth."
He said, "That is not the truth."
"It is," she insisted in the same low voice. "I know two men I'm afraid of, and I've seen both of them tonight."
"Now, I can understand you being afraid of Cairo," Spade said. "He's out of your reach."
"And you aren't?"
"Not that way," he said and grinned.
She blushed. She wrinkled her forehead and spoke about the statue.
"It's a black figure, as you know, smooth and shiny, of a bird, a hawk or a falcon, about that high." She held her hands a foot apart.
"What makes it important?"
"I don't know," she said. "They'd never tell me. They promised me £500 if I helped them get it. Then Floyd said afterward, after we'd left Joe, that he'd give me $750.
"So it must be worth more than $7,500.
"Oh, much more than that," she said. "They didn't pretend that they were sharing equally with me. They were simply hiring me to help them."
"To help them how?"
"To help them get it from the man who's had it," she said slowly. "A Russian named Kemidov."
"How?"
"Oh, but that's not important," she objected, "and wouldn't help you." She smiled impudently. "And is certainly none of your business."
"This was in Constantinople?"
She hesitated, nodded, and said, "Marmora."
He waved his cigarette at her, saying, "Go ahead. What happened then?"
"But that's all. I've told you. They promised me £500 to help them, and I did. And then we found that Joe Cairo meant to desert us, taking the Falcon with him and leaving us with nothing. So we did exactly that to him first. But then I wasn't any better off than I had been before, because Floyd hadn't any intention at all of paying me the £750 he'd promised me. I'd learned that by the time we got here. He said we would go to New York, where he would sell it and give me my share, but I could see he wasn't telling me the truth." Indignation had darkened her eyes to violet. "And that's why I came to you, to get you to help me learn where the Falcon was."
"And suppose you'd got it, what then?"
"Then I'd have been in a position to talk terms with Mr. Floyd Thursby."
Spade squinted at her and suggested, "But you wouldn't have known where to take it to get more money than he'd give you, the larger sum that you knew he expected to sell it for."
"I did not know," she said.
Spade scowled at the ashes he dumped on his plate. "What makes it worth all that money?" he demanded. "You must have some idea, at least be able to guess."
"I haven't the slightest idea."
"What's it made of?"
Porcelain or black stone, I don't know. I've never touched it. I've only seen it once for a few minutes. Floyd showed it to me when we first got hold of it. Spade mashed the end of his cigarette in his plate. His scowl had gone away. He wiped his lips with his napkin, dropped it crumpled on the table. He spoke casually. "You're a liar," he said. She got up and stood at the end of the table. "I am a liar," she said. "I've always been a liar. I don't brag about it. It's childish." His voice was good-humored. "Was there any truth at all in that yarn?" She hung her head. "Some," she whispered. "How much?" Not very much." Spade put a hand under her chin and lifted her head. He laughed into her wet eyes. "We've got all night before us. I'll put some more brandy and some more coffee, and we'll try again." "Oh, I'm so tired," she said tremulously. "So tired of it all, of myself, of lying and thinking up lies, and of not knowing what is a lie and what is the truth. I wish I—" She put her hands up to Spade's cheeks, put her open mouth hard against his mouth, her body flat against his body. Spade's arms went around her, holding her to him, muscles bulging his blue sleeves, a hand cradling her head, its fingers half lost among red hair, a hand moving, groping fingers over her slim back. His eyes burned yellowly. Beginning day had reduced night to a thin smokiness when Spade sat up. At his side, Bridget O'Shaughnessy's soft breathing had the regularity of utter sleep. Spade was quiet, leaving bed and bedroom and shutting the bedroom door. He dressed in the bathroom. Then he examined the sleeping girl's clothes, took a flat brass key from the pocket of her coat, and went out.
Spade went to search her apartment, turned it upside down, and found nothing.
On his way home, he stopped at a store and bought oranges, eggs, rolls, butter, and cream. Spade went quietly into his apartment, but before he had shut the corridor door behind him, Bridget O'Shaughnessy cried out, "Who is it?" "Young Spade, bearing breakfast." "Oh, you frightened me." Spade put his packages on the kitchen table and went into the bedroom. He sat on the bed beside the girl, kissed her smooth shoulder, and said, "I wanted to see if that kid was still on the job and to get stuff for breakfast." "Is he?" "No." She sighed and leaned against him. "I awakened and you weren't here, and then I heard someone coming in. I was terrified."
He cooked breakfast and slipped the flat brass key into her coat pocket again, while she bathed and dressed. Their breakfast was on the table when she returned to the kitchen. They sat where they had sat the night before and ate heartily.
"Now, about the bird," Spade suggested. She put her fork down and looked at him. "You can't ask me to talk about that this morning of all mornings," she protested. "I don't want to, and I won't." "It's a stubborn damned hussy," he said sadly, and put a piece of roll into his mouth. The youth who had shadowed Spade was not in sight when Spade and Bridget O'Shaughnessy crossed the sidewalk to the waiting taxicab. The taxicab was not followed.
They parted at the door of the Coronet, having made plans for dinner, and Spade went on to the Belvedere. When he entered the lobby, he spotted the youth who had shadowed him. At the desk, Spade learned that Cairo was not in.
Sauntering, he crossed the lobby to the divan and sat down beside, not more than a foot from, the young man. Seen at this scant distance, he seemed certainly less than 20 years old. His features were small, in keeping with his stature, and regular. His skin was fair. His clothing was neither new nor of more than ordinary quality, but it and his manner of wearing it was marked by a hard, masculine neatness. Spade asked casually, "Where is he?" while shaking tobacco down into a brown paper curved to catch it. The boy lowered his paper. He said in a voice as colorless and composed and cold as his young face, "What?" "Where is he?" Spade was busy with his cigarette. "Who?" "The fairy." "What do you think you're doing, Jack?" the boy demanded. "Kidding me?" "I'll tell you when I am. New York, aren't you?" "Shove off," he said from the side of his mouth. "You'll have to talk to me before you're through, Sonny. Some of you will. And you can tell G I said so. Keep asking for it and you're going to get it, he said. Plenty. I told you to shove off. Shove off. Spade chuckled and said, "That would go over big back on 7th Avenue. But you're not in Romeville now. You're in my burg. Well, where is he?" The boy spoke 2 words. The first a short, guttural verb. The second, you. "People lose their teeth talking like that. If you want to hang around, you'll be polite." The boy repeated his 2 words. Spade dropped his cigarette into a tall stone jar and with a lifted hand caught the attention of a man who'd been at the cigar stand for several minutes. The man nodded and came towards him. "Hello, Sam," he said. "Hello, Luke." They shook hands and Luke said, "Say, that's too bad about Miles." "Uh-huh. It's a bad break." Spade jerked his head to indicate the boy. "What do you let these cheap gunmen hang out in your lobby for, with their tools bulging in their clothes?" "Yes?" Luke examined the boy with crafty brown eyes set in a suddenly hard face. "What do you want here?" he asked. The boy stood up. Spade stood up. The boy looked like a schoolboy standing in front of them.
Luke chased the boy out with the warning not to come back. Spade inquired of Luke about Joel Cairo, who was staying in room 635. The house detective knew nothing except that he hadn't slept in his room that night. Spade asked Luke to keep an eye on him.
It was 21 minutes past 11 by the clock over the elevator doors when Joel Cairo came in from the street. His forehead was bandaged. His clothes had the limp unfreshness of too many hours' consecutive wear. His face was pasty with sagging mouth and eyelids. Spade met in front of the desk. "Good morning," said Spade easily. "Let's go someplace where we can talk." Cairo raised his chin. "Please excuse me," he said. "Our conversations in private have not been such that I am anxious to continue them. Pardon my speaking bluntly, but it is the truth." "You mean last night?" Spade made an impatient gesture with head and hands. "What in hell else could I do? I thought you'd see that. If you pick a fight with her or let her pick one with you, I've got to throw in with her. I don't know where that damn bird is. You don't. She does. How in the hell are we going to get it if I don't play along with her?" Cairo hesitated, said dubiously, "You have always, I must say, a smooth explanation ready." Spade scowled. "What do you want me to do, learn to stutter? Well, we can talk over here." He led the way to the divan. When they were seated, he asked, "Dundee take you down to the hall?" "Yes." "What'd you let the police shake out of you?" There was prim satisfaction in Cairo's smile. "Not a single thing. I adhered to the course you indicated earlier in your rooms." His smile went away. "Though I certainly wished you had devised a more reasonable story, I felt decidedly ridiculous repeating it." Spade grinned mockingly. "Sure," he said, "but its goofiness is what makes it good. You sure you didn't give them anything?" "You may rely on it, Mr. Spade. I did not." Spade drummed with his fingers on the leather seat between them. "You'll be hearing from Dundee again. Stay dummied up on him, and you'll be all right. Don't worry about the story's goofiness. A sensible one would have had us all in the cooler. You'll want to sleep if you've been standing up under a police storm all night. See you later."
Effie Perrine was on the telephone when Spade entered his outer office. She told her boss, Miss O'Shaughnessy, was waiting inside, that Sergeant Polhouse had called, and so had G. Spade's eyes brightened at the latter. G, she said, would call again. Bridget O'Shaughnessy, dressed as on her first visit to the office, came quickly towards him.
"Somebody's been in my apartment," she exclaimed. "It's all upside down, every which way." He seemed moderately surprised. "Anything taken?" "I don't think so. I don't know. I'm afraid to stay. I changed as fast as I could and came down here." He put an arm around her shoulders and led her over to his swivel chair. He kissed the tip of her nose lightly and set her down in the chair. "Now we've got to find a new home for you, haven't we?" he said. She nodded with emphasis. "I won't go back there." "I think I've got it. Wait a minute." He went to the outer office, shut the door, and asked his secretary, Does your woman's intuition still tell you that she's a Madonna or something? I still believe that no matter what kind of trouble she's gotten into, she's all right, said Effie, if that's what you mean. That's what I mean, he said. Are you strong enough to give her a lift? Could you put her up for a few days at your home? Her joint's been broken into. Effie Perrine leaned forward, asking earnestly, Is she really in danger, Sam? I think she is, he replied.
Spade made arrangements for Bridget to stay with Effie and her mother, and took the cab with her part of the way to make certain she wasn't followed.
The telephone bell was ringing when Spade returned to his office. Hello. Yes, this is Spade. Yes, I got it. I've been waiting to hear from you. Who? Mr. Gutman. Oh, yes, sure. Now, the sooner the better. 12C. Right. Say 15 minutes? Right. Spade sat on the corner of his desk beside the telephone and rolled a cigarette. The door opened and Iva Archer came in. She stood just inside the door, wadding a black-bordered handkerchief in her small gloved hands, peering into his face with frightened red and swollen eyes. "Oh, Sam, forgive me, she cried in a choked voice. He said, Sure, that's all right. Forget it. But Sam, she wailed, I sent those policemen there. I was mad, crazy with jealousy, and I phoned them that if they'd go there, they'd learn something about Miles's murder. What made you think that? Oh, I didn't, but I was mad, Sam, and I wanted to hurt you. Well, it made things damned awkward. But it's all right now, only don't get any more crazy notions like that. I won't, she promised, ever. But you weren't nice to me last night. You were cold and distant and wanted to get rid of me. When I'd come down there and waited so long to warn you, and you... Warn me about what? About Phil. He's found out about you being in love with me, and Miles had told him about my wanting a divorce, though of course he never knew what for, and now Phil thinks you killed his brother. Well, that's nice, Spade said softly. I'm sorry, she whimpered. I know you won't forgive me. I'm sorry. He patted her shoulder and said pleasantly, It was a dumb trick, all right, but it's done now. You'd better run along home and think up things to tell the police. You'll be hearing from them. Maybe it'd be best to say no right across the board. The mahogany door of Suite 12C at the Alexandria Hotel was opened by the boy Spade had talked to in the Belvedere lobby. The boy did not say anything. Spade went in. A fat man came to meet him. The fat man was flabbily fat with bulbous pink cheeks and lips and chins and neck, with a great soft egg of a belly that was all his torso, and pendant cones for arms and legs. As he advanced to meet Spade, all his bulbs rose and shook and fell separately with each step in the manner of clustered soap bubbles not yet released from the pipe through which they'd been blown. His eyes, made small by fat puffs around them, were dark and sleek. He wore a black cutaway coat, black vest, black satin ascot tie holding a pinkish pearl, striped gray worsted trousers, and patent leather shoes. His voice was a throaty purr. "Ah, Mr. Spade," he said with enthusiasm, and held out a hand like a fat pink star. Spade took his hand and smiled and said, "How do you do, Mr. Gutman?" Holding Spade's hand, the fat man guided him across the room to a green plush chair beside a table that held a siphon, some glasses, and a bottle of Johnny Walker whiskey on a tray, a box of cigars, Corona del Ritz, 2 newspapers, and a small and plain yellow soapstone box. We begin well, sir," the fat man purred, turning with a proffered glass in his hand. "I distrust a man that says when, if he's got to be careful not to drink too much, it's because he's not to be trusted when he does." The fat man raised his glass and said, "Well, sir, here's to plain speaking and clear understanding." They drank and lowered their glasses. The fat man looked shrewdly at Spade and asked,
You're a close-mouthed man. Spade shook his head. I like to talk. Better and better, the fat man exclaimed. I distrust a close-mouthed man. He generally picks the wrong time to talk and says the wrong things. Talking's something you can't do judiciously unless you keep in practice. He beamed over his glass. We'll get along, sir, that we will. He held out a box of Coronas del Ritz. A cigar, sir. Spade took the cigar, trimmed the end of it, and lighted it. Now, sir, said the fat man, we'll talk if you like, and I'll tell you right out that I'm a man who likes talking to a man that likes to talk. Swell. Will we talk about the blackbird? The fat man laughed, and his bulbs rode up and down on his laughter. Will we? He asked. And we will, he replied. You're the man for me, sir, a man cut along my own lines. No beating about the bush, but right to the point. But first, sir, answer me a question, please, though maybe it's an unnecessary one, so we'll understand each other from the beginning. You're here as Miss O'Shaughnessy's representative. Spade replied deliberately. I can't say yes or no. There's nothing certain about it either way. Yet, it depends. It depends on... Spade shook his head. If I knew what it depends on, I could say yes or no. Maybe it depends on Joel Cairo, the fat man suggested. Spade's prompt, maybe, was non-committal. He drank. Let's talk about the blackbird, he said. The fat man leaned forward. Well, sir, if I told you, by gad, if I told you half, you'd call me a liar. Spade smiled. No, he said, not even if I thought it. But if you won't take the risk, just tell me what it is, and I'll figure out the profits. The fat man laughed. You couldn't do it, sir. Nobody could do it that hadn't had a world of experience with things of that sort. And, he paused impressively. There aren't any other things of that sort. He stared at Spade with an intenseness that suggested myopia. He asked, You mean you don't know what it is?
The fat man wanted to know more of what Spade knew. What had Joel Cairo offered for the Falcon? Spade told him, $10,000, and the fat man laughed scornfully. And Miss O'Shaughnessy? Spade was non-committal. The fat man chuckled, and they drank. Gutman now concluded he was the only one who knew the full story of the Falcon. But he angered Spade when he said he wasn't sure he was going to tell him anything.
Don't be a fool, Spade said. I know what it is. I know where it is. That's why we're here. Well, sir, where is it? Spade ignored the question. You see, the fat man said blandly, I must tell you what I know, but you will not tell me what you know. That is hardly equitable, sir. No. I do not think we can do business along those lines. Spade's face became pale and hard. He spoke rapidly in a low, furious voice. Think again and think fast. I told that punk of yours that you'd have to talk to me before you got through. I'll tell you now that you'll do your talking today or you're through. What are you wasting my time for, you and your lousy secret? Christ, I know exactly what that stuff is that they keep in the sub-treasury vaults, but what good does that do me? I can get along without you. God damn you, maybe you could have gotten along without me if you'd kept clear of me, but you can't now, not in San Francisco. You'll come in or you'll get out, and you'll do it today. He turned and with angry heedlessness tossed his glass at the table. The glass struck the wood, burst apart, and splashed its contents in glittering fragments over table and floor. Spade, deaf and blind to the crash, wheeled to confront the fat man again.
Still furious, he began another harangue when the door opened and the boy who admitted him came in. He shut the door, stood in front of it with his hands flat against his flanks, and looked at Spade.
Another thing, Spade repeated, glaring at the boy. Keep that gunsel away from me while you're making up your mind. I'll kill him. I don't like him. He makes me nervous. I'll kill him the first time he gets in my way. I won't give him an even break. I'll kill him. The boy's lips twitched in a shadowy smile. He neither raised his eyes nor spoke. The fat man said tolerantly, Well, sir, I must say you have a most violent temper. Temper? Spade laughed crazily. He pointed a thick forefinger at the fat man's belly. Think it over and think like hell. You got till 5:30 to do it in, then you're either in or you're out. For keeps. He let his arm drop, scowled at the bland fat man for a moment, scowled at the boy, and went to the door through which he'd entered. 5:30, then the curtain, he said harshly. The boy repeated the 2 words he had twice spoken in the Belvedere lobby. His voice was not loud. It was bitter. Spade went out and slammed the door. Spade rode down from Gutman's floor in an elevator. His lips were dry and rough in a face otherwise pale and damp.
Effie Perrine was standing in the center of Spade's outer office when he entered. The news wasn't good. Bridget O'Shaughnessy had not arrived at her home.
I'm going out and find her if I have to dig up sewers, he said. Stay here till I'm back or you hear from me. For Christ's sake, let's do something right.
Spade hit the corner taxi stand and approached the driver. I got into your cab with the lady at noontime. Where did you drop her after I left?
I took her to the ferry building. By yourself? Yeah, sure. Didn't take her anywhere else first? No. It was like this. After we dropped you, I went on to Sacramento, and when we got to Polk, she rapped on the glass and said she wanted to get a newspaper, so I stopped at the corner and whistled for a kid, and she got a paper. Which paper? The Call. Then I went on out Sacramento some more, and just after we'd crossed Van Ness, she knocked on the glass again and said take her to the ferry building. Was she excited or anything? Not so as I noticed. And when you got to the ferry building, she paid me off, and that was all. Take the newspaper with her? Yeah, she had it tucked under her arm when she paid me. With the pink sheet outside, or one of the white? Ah, hell, Cap, I don't remember that. Spade thanked the chauffeur and said, "Get yourself a smoke," and gave him a silver dollar. Spade bought a copy of The Call and carried it into an office building vestibule to examine it out of the wind. His eyes ran swiftly over the front page headlines and over those on the second and third pages. An arrest, a shooting, and a burglary caught his attention momentarily, and after that nothing until he reached the 35th page, which held news of the weather, shipping, produce, finance, divorce, births, marriages, and deaths. He read the list of dead, passed over to the 38th and last page, sighed, folded the newspaper, put it in his pocket, and rolled a cigarette. Then he hailed a taxicab and had himself driven to the Coronet.
He let himself into the building and into O'Shaughnessy's apartment with the key she had given him, except that the box that had held jewelry now stood empty on the dressing table top. Nothing in her apartment was of any special note.
In the doorway of his office building, Spade came face to face with the boy he had left at Gutman's. The boy put himself in Spade's path, blocking the entrance. "Come on," said the boy. "He wants to see you." Spade grinned and said mockingly, "I didn't expect you till 5:25. I hope I haven't kept you waiting." "Keep on writing me, and you're going to be picking iron out of your navel." Spade chuckled. "The cheaper the croon, the gaudier the patter," he said cheerfully. "Well, let's go." They went into the Alexandria, rode up to the 12th floor, and walked down the corridor towards Gutman's suite. Nobody else was in the corridor. Spade lagged a little, so that when they were within 15 feet of Gutman's door, he was perhaps a foot and a half behind the boy. He leaned sidewise suddenly and grasped the boy from behind by both arms just beneath the boy's elbows. He forced the boy's arms forward so that the boy's hands in his overcoat pockets lifted the overcoat up before him. The boy struggled and squirmed, but he was impotent in the big man's grip. The boy kicked back, but his feet went between Spade's spread legs. They were tense and motionless for a long moment. Then the boy's arms became limp. Spade released the boy and stepped back. In each of Spade's hands, when they came out of the boy's overcoat pockets, there was a heavy automatic pistol. The boy turned and faced Spade. The boy's face was a ghastly white blank. He kept his hands in his overcoat pockets. He looked at Spade's chest and did not say anything. Spade put the pistols in his own pockets and grinned derisively. "Come on," he said. "This'll put you in solid with your boss." They went to Gutman's door and Spade knocked. Gutman opened the door. A glad smile lighted his fat face. He held out a hand and greeted Spade.
"Thank you for coming," he said. "Come in." Spade shook the hand and entered. The boy went in behind him. The fat man shut the door. Spade took the boy's pistols from his pockets and held them out to Gutman. "Here. You shouldn't let him run around with these. He'll get himself hurt." The fat man laughed merrily and took the pistols. "Well, well," he said. "What's this?" He looked from Spade to the boy. Spade said, "A crippled newsie took 'em away from him, but I made him give them back." Gutman laughed again. "By God, sir," he told Spade, "you're a chap worth knowing, an amazing character. Come in, sit down, give me your hat." The boy left the room. The fat man installed Spade in a green plush chair by the table, pressed a cigar upon him, held a light to it, mixed whiskey and carbonated water, put one glass in Spade's hand, and holding the other, sat down facing Spade. "Now, sir," he said, "I hope you'll let me apologize for—" "Never mind that," Spade said. "Let's talk about the bird." The fat man cocked his head and regarded Spade with fond eyes. "All right, sir," he agreed. "Let's." He took a sip from the glass in his hand. "This is going to be the most astounding thing you've ever heard of, sir, and I say that knowing that a man of your caliber and your profession must have known some astounding things in his time." Spade nodded politely. The fat man screwed up his eyes and asked, "What do you know, sir, about the Order of the Hospital of St. John of Jerusalem, later called the Knights of Rhodes, and other things?" Spade waved his cigar. "Not much. Only what I remember from history in school. Crusaders or something." "Very good. Now, you don't remember that Suleiman the Magnificent chased them out of Rhodes in 1523? "No." "Well, sir, he did. And they settled in Crete. And they stayed there for 7 years until 1530, when they persuaded the Emperor Charles V to give them—" Gutman held up 3 puffy fingers and counted them— "Malta, Gozo, and Tripoli." "Yes?" "Yes, but with these conditions. They were to pay the emperor each year the tribute of 1, he held up a finger, falcon, in acknowledgment that Malta was still under Spain, and if they ever left the island, it was to revert to Spain. Understand? He was giving it to them, but not unless they used it, and they couldn't give or sell it to anybody else." "Yes." The fat man looked over his shoulders at the 3 closed doors, hunched his chair a few inches nearer Spade's, and reduced his voice to a husky whisper. "Have you any conception of the extreme, the immeasurable wealth of the order at that time?" "If I remember," Spade said, "they were pretty well fixed." Gutman smiled indulgently. "Pretty well, sir, is putting it mildly." His whisper became lower and more purring. "They were rolling in wealth, sir. You've no idea."
The fat man's knowledge of the Falcon's history was bewildering, but Spade listened attentively, following every esoteric reference and arcane historical fact. He followed Gutman's odyssey of the jeweled bird from Spain's King Charles to Algiers, to Turin, then to Paris. Then, in 1931, a Greek dealer by the name of Charlios Constantinitis found it in an obscure shop. Gutman met the Greek and learned of the Falcon's history from him. Charlios knew the bird's value would be even more enormous once its authenticity was established beyond doubt. The Greek, to hold it safe while pursuing his researches into its history, re-enameled the bird. 1 year to the very day he had acquired it, Constantinitis' establishment was burglarized and he was murdered. That was 17 years ago, the fat man recalled.
"Well, sir, it took me 17 years to locate the bird, but I did it. I'm not a man that's easily discouraged when he wants something." He drained his glass, dried his lips, and returned his handkerchief to his pocket. He continued, "I traced it to the home of a Russian general, one Kemidov, in a Constantinople suburb. He didn't know a thing about it, It was nothing but a black enameled figure to him, but his natural contrariness of a Russian general kept him from selling it to me when I made an offer. I wanted it, and I was afraid this stupid soldier might begin to investigate his property, might chip off some of the enamel. So I sent some, agents to get it. Well, sir, they got it, and I haven't got it, but I'm going to get it. Your glass, sir.
Now then, the bird doesn't belong to any of you, Spade asked. But to a General Kamadov?
Belong, the fat man said jovially. Well, sir, you might say it belonged to the King of Spain, but I don't see how you can honestly grant anybody else clear title to it, except by right of possession. He clucked. An article of that value that is passed from hand to hand by such means is clearly the property of whoever can get a hold of it.
Well, then it's Miss O'Shaughnessy's now.
No, sir, except as my agent.
Spade said, "Oh," ironically.
There's no doubt that she's got it now? Gutman asked.
Not much.
Where?
I don't know exactly. The fat man set the bottle on the table with a bang.
But you said you did, he protested.
Spade made a careless gesture with one hand. I meant to say I know where to get it when the time comes.
The pink bulbs of Gutman's face arranged themselves more happily. And you do? He asked.
Yes.
Where?
Spade grinned and said, "Leave that to me. That's my end."
When?
When I'm ready. The fat man pursed his lips, and smiling with only slight uneasiness, asked,
Mr. Spade, where is Miss O'Shaughnessy now?
"In my hands, safely tucked away."
Gutman smiled with approval. Trust you for that, sir, he said. Well now, sir, before we sit down to talk prices, answer me this. How soon can you, or how soon are you willing to produce the Falcon?
"A couple of days."
The fat man nodded. That is satisfactory. But I forget our nourishment. He turned to the table, poured whiskey, spurted charged water into it, set a glass at Spade's elbow, and held his aloft. Well, sir, here's to a fair bargain and profits large enough for both of us.
They drank and talked about the value of the bird. The fat man's offer to Spade was this: $25,000 when the Falcon was delivered, another $25,000 when Gutman arrived in New York. His alternate proposal was 25% of all the profits he might reap from the bird.
Spade's speech began to slur. He pulled his sagging lower lip tight against the other. He shook his head impatiently. A sharp, frightened gleam awoke in his eyes and was smothered by the deepening muddiness. He stood up, helping himself up with his hands on the arms of his chair. He shook his head again and took an uncertain step forward. He laughed thickly and muttered, "God damn you." He took another uncertain step. The fat man called sharply, "Wilma!" A door opened and the boy came in. Spade essayed another uncertain step. The boy's leg darted out across Spade's leg in front. Spade tripped over the interfering leg and crashed face down on the floor. Spade tried to get up. The boy drew his right foot far back and kicked Spade's temple. The kick rolled Spade over on his side. Once more he tried to get up, could not, and went to sleep. At a few minutes past 6 in the morning, Spade made his way into his office. Effie Perrine sat sleeping with her head on her forearms on her desk. She had one of Spade's overcoats wrapped cape fashion around her. He went over to the girl and put a hand on her shoulder. She saw Spade, smiled, leaned back in her chair, and rubbed her eyes with her fingers. "So, you finally got back," she said. "What time is it?" 6 o'clock. What are you doing here?" She shivered, drew Spade's overcoat closer around her, and yawned. "You told me to stay till you got back or phoned." "Oh, you're the sister of the boy who stood on the burning deck." "I wasn't going to..."
She broke off and stood up. "Oh, your head. What happened?" "I don't know whether I fell or was slugged. I don't think it amounts to much, but it hurts like hell," he said. "I went visiting, was fed knockout drops, and came to 12 hours later all spread out on a man's floor." She reached out and removed his hat from his head. "It's terrible," she said. "You'll have to get a doctor. You can't walk around with a head like that." "It's not as bad as it looks, except for the headache. And that might be most likely from the drops. Anything turn up after I left?" "Did you find Miss O'Shaughnessy, Sam?" "Not yet. Anything turn up after I left?" "A boy came in with a message that Mr. Gutman would be delighted to talk to you before 5:30. "I got that," he said. "I met the boy downstairs, and talking to Mr. Gutman got me this." "Is that the G who phoned, Sam?" "Yes." "And what—" "He wants something he thinks I can get. I persuaded him I could keep him from getting it if he didn't make the deal with me before 5:30. Then, sure. It was after I told him he'd have to wait a couple of days that he fed me the junk. It's not likely he thought I'd die. He knew I'd be up and around in 10 or 12 hours. So maybe the answer is that he figured he could get it without my help in that time if I was fixed so I couldn't butt in." He scowled. I hope to Christ he was wrong. His stare became less distant. "You didn't get any word from the O'Shaughnessy?" The girl shook her head no and asked, "Has this got something to do with her?" "Something." "This thing he wants belongs to her?" "Or to the King of Spain, sweetheart," he said wryly.
After a leisurely breakfast at the palace, during which he read both morning papers, Spade went home, shaved, bathed, rubbed ice on his bruised temple, and put on fresh clothes. He went to Bridget O'Shaughnessy's apartment at the Coronet. Nobody was in the apartment. Nothing had been changed since his last visit. He went to the Alexandria Hotel. Gutman was not in. Spade was told that the Gutman party, his daughter Rhea and Wilmer Cook, had arrived at the hotel from New York 10 days before and had not checked out. Spade went to the Belvedere and found Luke, the hotel detective. He persuaded Luke to help him search Joel Cairo's room.
"They stopped at the desk long enough for Luke to fix it so we'll get a ring if he comes in," and went up to Cairo's room. Cairo's bed was smooth and trim, but paper in wastebasket, unevenly drawn blinds, and a couple of rumpled towels in the bathroom showed that the chambermaid had not yet been in that morning.
Spade skirmished through Cairo's belongings, but found nothing to interest him. He crossed the room and bent down over the wastebasket. He took a newspaper from the basket.
His eyes brightened when he saw it was the previous day's Call. It was folded with the classified advertising page outside. He opened it, examined that page, and nothing there stopped his eyes. He turned the paper over and looked at the page that had been folded inside, the page that held financial and shipping news, the weather, births, marriages, divorces, and deaths. From the lower left-hand corner, a little more than 2 inches of the bottom of the second column had been torn out. Immediately above the tear was a small caption, "Arrived today," followed by 12:20 a.m. Capic from Astoria, 5:05 a.m. Helen P. Drew from Greenwood, 5:06 a.m. Alvarado from Bandon. The tear passed through the next line, leaving only enough of its letters to make "From Sydney" inferable. Luke, leaning over his shoulder, asked, "What's this all about?" "Looks like the gent's interested in the boat." "Thanks a lot, Luke. Will you give me a ring as soon as he comes in?" "Sure." Spade went to the business office of the Call, bought a copy of the previous day's issue, opened it to the shipping news page, and compared it with the page taken from Cairo's wastebasket. He read the list slowly, and when he had finished, he underscored Hong Kong with a fingernail, cut the list of arrivals from the paper with his pocket knife, put the rest of the paper and Cairo's sheet into the wastebasket, and returned to his office. He sat down at his desk, looked up a number in the telephone book, and used the telephone. "Kearney, 1401, please." "Where is the Paloma in from Hong Kong yesterday morning, docked?" He held the receiver hook down with his thumb for a moment, released it, and said, Davenport 2020, please. Detective Bureau, please. Is Sergeant Polhouse there? Thanks. Hello, Tom. This is Sam Spade. Yes, I tried to get you yesterday afternoon. Sure. Suppose you go to lunch with me. Right. He pushed the telephone away, yawned, stretched, felt his bruised temple, looked at his watch, and rolled and lighted a cigarette. He smoked sleepily until Effie Perrine came in. There was a boat on fire when I came back. They were towing it out from the pier, and the smoke blew all over our ferry boat. Were you near enough to see the name of the boat? He asked. Yes. La Paloma. Why? Spade smiled ruefully. I'm damned if I know why, sister, he said. The next afternoon, Spade had lunch with Detective Sergeant Tom Polhouse at one of Big John's tables at the state's Hofbrau. Polhouse balanced pale, bright jelly on a fork halfway between plate and mouth. He said, "We think Thursby shot Miles." "You think he did?" "He did. That Webley was his, and the slug in Miles came out of it." "Sure?" Spade demanded. "Dead sure," the police detective replied. "We got hold of a kid, a bellhop at Thursby's hotel, that had seen it in his room just that morning. He noticed it particular because he's never saw one just like it before, and that's the gun the slug in Miles came out of." Spade nodded and said, "Then that leaves Thursby the only one I killed." "Ah, Sam, we never really thought you'd—" Spade's smile checked Polhouse. The sergeant did have some information on Thursby. He was a small-time St. Louis gunman and mobster who did a hitch in prison before becoming bodyguard for Dixie Monahan, a big Chicago gambler. When Monahan welched on a huge gambling debt, Thursby vanished with him. Not much had been known about him since. Spade went into the Hotel Sutter and telephoned the Alexandria. Gutman was not in. No member of Gutman's party was in. Spade telephoned the Belvedere. Cairo was not in. Had not been in that day. Spade went to his office. Effie was waiting for him. "You haven't found her yet?" she asked. He shook his head and went on stroking his bruised temple lightly in circles with his fingertips. "How is it?" she asked. "All right, but I've got plenty of headache." She stroked his temple with her slender fingers. He leaned back until the back of his head over the chair top rested against her breast. Effie Perrine looked earnestly down at him. "Do you think you know where she is, Sam?" "I know where she went," he replied in a grudging tone. "Where?" She was excited. "Down to the boat you saw burning." "You went down there?" It was not a question. "I did not," Spade said. "Sam," she cried angrily, "She went down there," he said in a surly voice. "She wasn't taken. She went down there instead of to your house when she learned the boat was in. Well, what the hell? Am I supposed to run around after my clients begging them to help them?" "If you don't go down there this very minute, Sam, I will, and I'll take the police down there. Oh, Sam, go!" He stood up, cursing her. Then he said, "Christ, it'll be easier on my head than sitting here listening to you squawk." He looked at his watch. "Well, you might as well lock up and go home." She said, "I won't. I'm going to wait right here until you come back." He said, "Do as you damn please." Put his hat on, flinched, took it off, and went out carrying it in his hand.
Spade went to the boat, and an hour and a half later he returned to his office. After checking in with Effie, he hurried out again. A taxicab brought Spade to the Belvedere within 10 minutes of his departure from his office. He found Luke in the lobby. The hotel detective came grinning and shaking his head to meet Spade.
15 minutes late, he said. "Your bird Cairo is flooded." Spade cursed his luck. "Checked out. Gone bag and baggage," Luke said. Spade went back to his office. Effie Perrine looked up at him inquisitively. "Missed him," Spade grumbled and passed into his private room. She followed him in. "What about Miss O'Shaughnessy?" she demanded. "I missed her too," he replied, "but she'd been there." "On the La Paloma?" "The La is a lousy combination," he said. "Stop it. Be nice, Sam. Tell me." He set fire to his cigarette, pocketed his lighter, patted her shins, and said, "Yes, La Paloma. She got down there at a little after noon yesterday. That means she went straight there after leaving the cab at the ferry building. It's only a few piers away. The captain wasn't aboard. His name's Jacoby, and she asked for him by name. He was uptown on business. That would mean he didn't expect her, or not at that time anyway. She waited there till he came back at 4 o'clock. They spent the time from then till mealtime in his cabin, and she ate with him. He inhaled and exhaled smoke and went on. After the meal, Captain Jacoby had 3 more visitors. One of them was Gutman, and one was Cairo, and one was the kid who delivered Gutman's message to you yesterday. Those 3 came together while Bridget was there, and the 5 of them did a lot of talking in the captain's cabin. It's hard to get anything out of the crew, but they had a row, and somewhere around 11 o'clock that night, a gun went off there, in the captain's cabin. The watchman beat it down there, but the captain met him outside and told him everything was all right. There's a fresh bullet hole in one corner of the cabin, up high enough to make it likely that the bullet didn't go through anybody to get there. As far as I could learn, there was only 1 shot, but as far as I could learn, it wasn't very far. He scowled and inhaled smoke again. Well, they left around midnight, the captain and his 4 visitors all together, and all of them seemed to have been walking all right. I got that from the watchman. That's all of it. The captain hasn't been back since. He didn't keep a date he had this noon with some shipping agents, and they haven't found him to tell him about the fire. And the fire? She asked. Spade shrugged. I don't know. It was discovered in the hold aft, in the rear basement late this morning. Chances are it got started sometime yesterday. They got it out all right, though it did damage enough. Nobody likes to talk about it much while the captain's away. It's the corridor door opened. Spade shut his mouth. Effie Perrine jumped down from the desk, but a man opened the connecting door before she could reach it. "Where's Spade?" the man asked. His voice brought Spade up erect and alert in his chair. It was a voice harsh and rasping with agony and with the strain of keeping 2 words from being smothered by the liquid bubbling that ran under and behind them. Effie Perrine, frightened, stepped out of the man's way. He stood in the doorway with his soft hat crushed between his head and the top of the doorframe. He was nearly 7 feet tall. His shoulders stuck out, high, thin, angular. His bony face, weather-coarsened, age-lined, was the color of wet sand and was wet with sweat on cheeks and chin. Held tight against the left side of his chest by a black-sleeved arm that ended in a yellowish claw was a brown paper-wrapped parcel bound with thin rope, an ellipsoid somewhat larger than an American football. The tall man stood in the doorway, and there was nothing to show that he saw Spade. He said, "You know..." And then the liquid bubbling came up in his throat and submerged whatever else he said. He put his other hand over the hand that held the ellipsoid. Holding himself stiffly straight, not putting his hands out to break his fall, he fell forward as a tree falls. Spade, wooden-faced and nimble, sprang from his chair and caught the falling man, and the brown-wrapped parcel dropped from the man's hands and rolled across the floor. A foot of the desk stopped it. Spade said, "Lock the door." While Effie Perrine, her teeth chattering, fumbled with the corridor door's lock, Spade knelt beside the thin man, turned him over on his back, and ran a hand down inside the overcoat. When he withdrew the hand presently, it came out smeared with blood. Spade rose and went to the washbowl in the outer office. Effie Perrine, wan and trembling and holding herself upright by means of a hand on the corridor door's knob and her back against its glass, whispered, Is he?" "Yes. Shot through the chest maybe a half-dozen times." Spade began to wash his hands. "Oughtn't we—" she began, but he cut her short. "It's too late for a doctor now, and I've got to think before we do anything." He finished washing his hands and began to rinse the bowl. "He couldn't have come far with those in him. If he... Why in hell couldn't he have stood up long enough to say something?" He frowned at the girl, rinsed his hands again, and picked up a towel. "Pull yourself together. Don't get sick on me now." He threw the towel down and ran fingers through his hair. "We'll have a look at that bundle." He went into the inner office again, stepped over the dead man's legs, and picked up the brown paper-wrapped parcel. When he felt its weight, his eyes glowed. He put it on his desk, turning it over so that the knotted part of the rope was uppermost. The knot was hard and tight. He took out his pocket knife and cut the rope. As the girl stood there, hands on a corner of the desk, watching him pull the rope loose and push aside brown paper, excitement began to supplant nausea in her face. "Do you think it is?" she whispered. "We'll soon know," Spade said. His face was hard and dull. His eyes were shining. When he had put the gray paper out of the way, he had an egg-shaped mass of pale excelsior wadded tight. His fingers tore the wad apart, and then he had the foot-high figure of a bird, black as coal and shiny where its polish was not dulled by wood dust and fragments of excelsior. Spade laughed. He put a hand down on the bird. His widespread fingers had ownership in their curving. He put his other arm around Effie Perrine and crushed her body against his. "We've got the damned thing, Angel," he said. "Ouch," she said. "You're hurting me." He took his arm away from her, picked the black bird up in both hands, and shook it to dislodge clinging excelsior. Then he stepped back, holding it up in front of him, and blew dust off it, regarding it triumphantly. The telephone bell rang. He nodded at the girl. She turned to the desk and put the receiver to her ear. She said, "Hello? Yes? Who? Oh, yes." Her eyes became large. "Yes. Yes. Hold the line." Her mouth suddenly stretched wide and fearful. She cried, "Hello! Hello! Hello!" She rattled the prong up and down and cried, "Hello!" twice. Then she sobbed and spun around to face Spade, who was close beside her by now. "It was Miss O'Shaughnessy," she said wildly. "She wants you. She's at the Alexandria, in danger." Her voice was, "Oh, it was awful, Sam. And something happened to her before she could finish. Go help her, Sam." Spade put the Falcon down on the desk and scowled gloomily. "I've got to take care of this fellow first," he said, pointing his thumb at the thin corpse on the floor. She beat his chest with her fists, crying, "No, no, you've got to go to her. Don't you see, Sam? He had the thing that was hers, and he came to you with it. Don't you see? He was helping her, and they killed him, and now she's... Oh, you've got to go." "All right," he said. "As soon as I've gone, phone the police. Forget this thing. Tell it as it happened, but forget he had a bundle." He chewed his lower lip. "Unless they pin you down. If they seem to know about it, you'll have to admit it, but that's not likely. Get it straight now. Everything happened the way it did happen, but without this dingus, unless they already know about it. Don't deny it, just don't mention it. You don't know anything about him, and you can't talk about my business until you see me. Got it?" "Yes, Sam. Who... Do you know who he is?" He grinned wolfishly. He said. "But I'd guess he was Captain Jacoby, master of the La Paloma." He picked up his hat and put it on. He looked thoughtfully at the dead man and then around the room. "Hurry, Sam," the girl begged. "Sure," he said absent-mindedly. "I'll hurry. I'd keep the door locked till they come." He took his hand from his chin and rubbed her cheek. "You're a damn good man, sister," he said, and went out. Carrying the parcel lightly under his arm, Spade hailed a passing taxicab. The taxicab carried him to the Pickwick Stage Terminal in 5th Street. He checked the bird at the parcel room there, put the check into a stamped envelope, wrote M.F. Holland and a San Francisco post office box number on the envelope, sealed it, and dropped it into a mailbox. From the stage terminal, another taxicab carried him to the Alexandria Hotel. Spade went up to Suite 12C and knocked on the door. The door was opened when he had knocked a second time by a small girl whose face was white and dim and who clung desperately to the inner doorknob with both hands. She gasped and fell into Spade's arms. Her body arched back over one of his arms, and her head dropped straight back so that her short, fair hair hung down her scalp, and her slender throat was a firm curve from chin to chest. She stirred then, resisting, and between parted lips that barely moved, blurred words came. "No, Mom, Miwa." She had been drugged. Spade got from the girl's impaired speech that Miss O'Shaughnessy had been kidnapped by her father, Joel Cairo, and Wilmer, and that they held her in Burlingame, California, at 26 Ancho Street. After calling the emergency hospital to alert them of the girl's plight, Spade and a chauffeur drove down to Burlingame at Ancho number 26 to find the house was unmistakably deserted and there was nothing to indicate it had been visited in weeks. Spade was driven back to the Alexandria. He went into the hotel to the desk where a tall young man with dark, grave face greeted him by name. Spade drew the young man to one end of the desk. "These Gutmans up in 12C, are they in?" The young man replied no, darting a quick glance at Spade. Then he looked away, hesitated, looked at Spade again, and murmured, A funny thing happened in connection with them this evening, Mr. Spade. Somebody called the emergency hospital and told them there was a sick girl up there. And there wasn't? Oh, no, there was nobody up there. They went out earlier in the evening. Spade said, "Well, these practical jokers have to have their fun." Thanks. Midnight was a few minutes away when Spade reached his home. He put the key in the street door's lock. Heels clicked rapidly on the sidewalk behind him. He let go of the key and wheeled. Bridget O'Shaughnessy ran up the steps to him. She put her arms around him and hung on him. She was panting. "Oh, I thought you'd never come." Her face was haggard, distraught, shaken by the tremors that shook her from head to foot. "You've been waiting?" he asked. "Yes." Panting, spaced her words. "In a doorway up the street." "Can you make it all right?" he asked, "or shall I carry you?" She shook her head against his shoulder. "I'll be all right when I get where I can sit down." They rode up to Spade's floor in the elevator and went around to his apartment. She left his arm and stood beside him, panting, both hands to her breast, while he unlocked his door. He switched on the passageway light. They went in. He shut the door and, with his arm around her again, took her back towards the living room. When they were within a step of the living room door, the light in the living room went on. The girl cried out and clung to Spade. Just inside the living room door, Fat Gutman stood smiling benevolently at them. The boy Wilmer came out of the kitchen behind them. Black pistols were gigantic in his small hands. Cairo came from the bathroom. He too had a pistol. Gutman said, "Well, sir, we're all here, as you can see for yourself. Now let's come in and sit down and be comfortable and talk."
Spade, with his arms around Bridget O'Shaughnessy, smiled meagerly over her head and said that sure he'd talk.
Gutman's bulbs jounced as he took 3 waddling backward steps away from the door. Spade and the girl went in together. The boy and Cairo followed them in. Cairo stopped in the doorway. The boy put away one of his pistols and came up close behind Spade. Spade turned his head far around to look down over his shoulder at the boy. "Get away. You're not going to frisk me," he said. The boy said, "Stand still. Shut up." Spade's nostrils went in and out with his breathing. His voice was level. "Get away. Put your paw on me, and I'm going to make you use the gun. Ask your boss if he wants me shot up before we talk." "Never mind, Wilma," the fat man said. He frowned indulgently at Spade. "You are certainly a most headstrong individual. Well, let's be seated." Spade said, "I told you I didn't like that punk." He took Bridget O'Shaughnessy to the sofa by the windows. They sat close together, her head against his left shoulder, his left arm around her shoulders. She had stopped trembling, had stopped panting. Gutman lowered himself into the padded rocking chair. Cairo chose the armchair by the table. The boy Wilmer did not sit down. Cairo put his pistol on the table beside him. Spade took off his hat and tossed it to the other end of the sofa. He grinned at Gutman. "That was a nice trip I took out to Burlingame. Naturally, I wanted to see you as soon as I had the Falcon. Cash customers. Why not? I went to Burlingame expecting to run into this sort of a meeting. I didn't know you were blundering around half an hour late trying to get me out of the way so you could find Jackamie again before he found me." Gutman chuckled. His chuckle seemed to hold nothing but satisfaction. "Well, sir," he said, "in any case, here we are having our little meeting, if that's what you wanted." "That's what I wanted. How soon are you ready to make the first payment and take the Falcon off my hands?" Bridget O'Shaughnessy sat up straight and looked at Spade with surprised blue eyes. Gutman said, "Well, sir, as to that," and put a hand inside the breast of his coat. Cairo, hands on thighs, leaned forward in his chair, breathing between parted, soft lips. His dark eyes had the surface shine of lacquer. They shifted their focus warily from Spade's face to Gutman's, from Gutman's to Spade's. Gutman took a white envelope from his pocket. 10 eyes, the boy's now only half obscured by his lashes, looked at the envelope. He raised his head, smiled amiably, and scaled the envelope at Spade's lap. The envelope, though not bulky, was heavy enough to fly true. It struck the lower part of Spade's chest and dropped down on his thighs. He picked it up deliberately. The contents of the envelope were $1,000 bills, smooth and stiff and new. Spade took them out and counted them. There were 10 of them. Spade looked up, smiling. He said mildly, "We were talking about more money than this." "Yes, sir, we were," Gutman agreed. "But we were talking then. This is actual money, genuine coin of the realm, sir. With $1 of this, you can buy more than $10 of talk." Silent laughter shook his bulbs. "There are more of us to be taken care of now." He moved his twinkling eyes and his fat head to indicate Cairo. "And, well, sir, in short, the situation has changed." Spade's reply to the fat man was careless. "Sure, you're together now, but I've got the Falcon." Joel Cairo leaned forward and said primly in his high-pitched, thin voice, "I shouldn't think it would be necessary to remind you, Mr. Spade, that though you may have the Falcon, yet we certainly have you." Spade grinned. "I'm trying not to let that worry me," he said. He put the envelope aside and addressed Gutman. "We'll come back to the money later. There's another thing that's got to be taken care of first. We've got to have a fall guy." The fat man frowned without comprehension, but before he could speak, Spade was explaining. "The police have got to have a victim, somebody they can stick for those 3 murders. Now come, Mr. Spade. You can't expect us to believe at this late date that you are the least bit afraid of the police, or that you are not quite able to handle." Spade snorted with throat and nose. He interrupted Gutman irritably. "I'm not a damn bit afraid of them, and I know how to handle them. That's what I'm trying to tell you. The way to handle them is to toss them a victim, somebody they can hang the works on." "Well, sir, I grant you that's one way of doing it, but—" "But hell," Spade said. "It's the only way." His eyes were hot and earnest under a reddening forehead. "This is my city and my game. I could manage to land on my feet, sure, this time, but the next time I tried to put over a fast one, they'd stop me so fast I'd swallow my teeth. Hell with that. You birds will be in New York or Constantinople or someplace else. I'm in business here." "But surely," Gutman began, "you can—" "I can't," Spade said earnestly. "I won't. I mean it. Listen to me, Gutman. I'm telling you what's best for all of us. If we don't give the police a fall guy, it's 10 to 1 they'll sooner or later stumble on information about the Falcon. Then you'll have to duck for cover with it no matter where you are, and that's not going to help you make a fortune off it. Give them a fall guy and they'll stop right there."
Spade persisted. He suggested Wilmer as the prospective victim.
Gutman remained still and expressionless for a long moment. Then he decided to laugh. He laughed heartily and lengthily. When he stopped laughing, he turned earnestly to Spade. "By gad, sir, you're a character. That you are." "There's nothing funny about this," he said. "It's our best bet." "But, my dear man," Gutman objected, "can't you see? If I even for a moment thought of doing it... But that's ridiculous, too. I feel towards Wilmer just exactly as if he were my own son. I really do. But if I even for a moment thought of doing what you propose, what in the world do you think would keep Wilmer from telling the police every last detail about the Falcon and all of us?" Spade grinned with stiff lips. "Let him talk his head off. I promise you nobody will do anything about it. That's easy enough to fix." Gutman squirmed around to look at the boy. "What do you think of this, Wilmer? Funny, hmm?" The boy's eyes were cold hazel gleams under the lashes. He said in a low, distinct voice, "Yes, it's funny. The son of a bitch." The fat man puckered up his facial bulbs. "Now, mind you," he said, "I don't see how this suggestion of yours can be in any way practical, even leaving out the fact that I couldn't feel any different towards Wilmer if he was my own flesh and blood. But why don't you go ahead and outline the rest of your plan?" "Fair enough," Spade said. "Fair enough," Spade said.
Brian is like most district attorneys. He's more interested in how his record will look on paper than in anything else. To be sure of convicting one man, he'll let a half a dozen equally guilty accomplices go free, if trying to convict them all might confuse his case. That's the choice we'll give him, and he'll gobble it up. He wouldn't want to know about the Falcon. He'll be tickled pink to persuade himself that anything the punk tells him about is a lot of chewing gum, an attempt to muddle things up. Leave that end to me. I can show him that if he sticks to the punk, he can get a conviction standing on his head. Gutman wagged his head sideways in a slow, smiling gesture of benign disapproval. "No, sir," he said. "I'm afraid that won't do. Won't do at all. I don't see how even this district attorney of yours can link Thursby and Jacoby and Wilmer together without having to—" "You don't know district attorneys," Spade told him. "The Thursby angle is easy. He was a gunman, and so's your punk. Brian's already got a theory about that. There'll be no catch there. Well, Christ, they can only hang the punk once. Why try him for Jacoby's murder after he's been convicted of Thursby's? They simply close the record by writing it up against him and let it go at that." "Yes, but—" Gutman began and stopped to look at the boy. "Make him lay off me. I'm going to fog him if he keeps it up, and there won't be anything that'll stop me from doing it." "Now, Wilma," Gutman said, and turned to Spade. "Your plan is, sir, as I said in the first place, not at all practical. There's not the least bit of use discussing it any further." Spade quickly shifted his eyes to another corner of the room. "All right," he said. "Now I've got another suggestion. It's not as good as the first, but it's better than nothing. You want to hear it?" "Most assuredly." "Give them Cairo." Cairo hastily picked up his pistol from the table beside him. He held it tight in his lap with both hands. Its muzzle pointed at the floor, a little to one side of the sofa. His face had become yellowish again. His black eyes darted their gaze from face to face. Gutman looked disbelievingly at Spade. "Do what?" "Give the police Cairo," Spade repeated. "It's not as good as giving them the punk. Cairo's not a gunman, and he carries a smaller gun than Thursby and Jacoby were shot with. We'll have to go to more trouble framing him, but that's better than not giving the police anybody." Cairo cried in a voice shrill with indignation. "Suppose we give them you, Mr. Spade, or Miss O'Shaughnessy. How about that, if you're so set on giving them somebody?" Spade smiled at the Levantine and answered him evenly. "You people want the Falcon. I've got it. A fall guy is part of the price I'm asking. As for Miss O'Shaughnessy—" His dispassionate glance moved to her white, perplexed face. "If you think she can be rigged for the part, I'm perfectly willing to discuss it with you." The girl put her hands to her throat, uttered a short, strangled cry, and moved farther away from him. Gutman addressed Spade. "There is something in what Mr. Cairo says. You must take into consideration the—" "Like hell I must," he yelled. "If you kill me, how are you going to get the bird? See what I mean? If you try anything I don't like, I won't stand for it. I'll make it a matter of your having to call it off or kill me, knowing you can't afford to kill me." "I see what you mean," Gutman chuckled. That is an attitude, sir, that calls for the most delicate judgment on both sides."
Joel Cairo jumped up from his seat and whispered in the fat man's ear. Gutman listened attentively, shutting his eyes. Spade grinned at Bridget O'Shaughnessy. He turned to the boy.
2-to-1 they're selling you out, son, he said. In a voice choked horribly by emotion, the boy cried out and jerked his pistol up in front of his chest. Gutman flung a fat hand out at the boy's wrist, caught the wrist, and bore it and the gun down while Gutman's fat body was rising in haste from the rocking chair. Joel Cairo scurried around to the boy's other side and grasped his other arm. They wrestled with the boy while he struggled futilely against them. Wooden-faced, dreamy-eyed, Spade got up from the sofa and went over to the group. Cairo, still holding the boy's arm, stood partly in front of him, talking to him soothingly. Spade pushed Cairo aside gently and drove his left fist against the boy's chin. The boy's head snapped back as far as it could while his arms were held and then came forward. Spade drove his right fist against the boy's chin. Cairo dropped the boy's arm, letting him collapse against Gutman's great round belly. Cairo sprang at Spade, clawing at his face with the curved, stiff fingers of both hands. Spade blew his breath out and pushed the Levantine away. Cairo sprang at him again. Tears were in Cairo's eyes. Spade laughed and grunted, "Jesus, you're a pip," and cuffed the side of Cairo's face with an open hand, knocking him over against the table. Cairo regained his balance and sprang at Spade the third time. "Stop it," Spade growled. "I'll hurt you." Cairo cried, "Oh, you big coward!" and backed away from him. Spade stooped to pick up Cairo's pistol from the floor, and then the boy's. Gutman had put the boy in the rocking chair and stood looking at him with troubled eyes and an uncertainly puckered face. Cairo went down on his knees beside the chair and began to chafe one of the boy's limp hands. Spade felt the boy's chin with his fingers. "Nothing cracked," he said. "We'll spread 'em on the sofa." Bridget O'Shaughnessy got up quickly, and Spade laid the boy there. Cairo sat down beside the boy's head. Spade clinked the pistols together in his hand and smiled cheerfully at Gutman. "Well," he said, "there's our fall guy." Gutman's face was gray and his eyes were clouded. He did not look at Spade. He looked at the floor and did not say anything. Spade said, "Don't be a damn fool again. You let Cairo whisper to you, and you held the kid while I pasted him. You can't laugh that off, and you're likely to get yourself shot trying to." Gutman moved his feet on the rug and said nothing. Spade said, "And the other side of it is that you'll either say yes right now, or I'll turn the Falcon and the whole damn lot of you in." Gutman raised his head and muttered through his teeth, "I don't like that, sir." "You won't like it," Spade said. "Well?" The fat man sighed and made a wry face and replied sadly, "You can have him." Spade said, "That's swell." The boy lay on his back on the sofa, a small figure that was, except for its breathing, altogether corpse-like to the eye. Spade looked at the watch on his wrist. 2 o'clock, he said. "I can't get the Falcon till daylight, or maybe 8 o'clock. We got plenty of time to arrange everything." Gutman cleared his throat. "Where is it?" he asked, and then added in haste, "I don't really care, sir. What I had in mind was that it would be best for all concerned if we did not get out of each other's sight until our business has been transacted." He addressed Gutman. "We won't have to lose sight of each other. I can have the Falcon brought here." "That will be excellent," Gutman purred. "Then, sir, in exchange for the $10,000 and Wilma, you will give us the Falcon and an hour or two of grace, so we won't be in the city when you surrender him to the authorities." "Suit yourself," Spade replied. "I can hold Wilma here all day if you want." He began to roll a cigarette. "Let's get the details first. Why did he shoot Thursby? And why and where and how did he shoot Jacoby?" Gutman stopped rocking. "Thursby was a notorious killer and Miss O'Shaughnessy's ally. We knew that removing him in just that manner would make her stop and think that perhaps it would be best to patch up her differences with us after all, besides leaving her without so violent a protector. You see, sir, I am being candid with you." "Yes, keep it up. You didn't think he might have the Falcon?" "We didn't think that for a minute," he replied. "We had the advantage of knowing Miss O'Shaughnessy far too well for that, and while we didn't know then that she had given the Falcon to Captain Jacoby in Hong Kong to be brought over here on the Paloma while they took a faster boat, still we didn't for a minute think that, if only one of them knew where it was, Thursby was the one." Spade nodded thoughtfully and asked, "You didn't try to make a deal with him before you gave him the works?" "Yes, sir, we certainly did. I talked to him myself that night. Wilma had located him 2 days before and had been trying to follow him to wherever he was meeting Miss O'Shaughnessy, but Thursby was too crafty for that, even if he didn't know he was being watched. So that night Wilma went to his hotel, learned he wasn't in, and waited outside for him. I suppose Thursby returned immediately after killing your partner. Be that as it may, Wilma brought him to see me. We could do nothing with him. He was quite determinedly loyal to Miss O'Shaughnessy. Well, sir, Wilmer followed him back to his hotel and did what he did. Spade thought for a moment. That sounds all right. Now, Jacoby. Gutman looked at Spade with grave eyes and said, Jacoby's death was Miss O'Shaughnessy's fault. The girl gasped, "Oh," and put a hand to her mouth. Spade's voice was heavy and even. "Never mind that now. Tell me what happened." After a shrewd look at Spade, Gutman smiled. "Well, Cairo, as you know, got in touch with me. I sent for him after he left police headquarters the night or morning he was up here. We recognized the mutual advantage of pooling forces." He directed his smile at the Levantine. "Mr. Cairo is a man of nice judgment. The Paloma was his thought. He saw the notice of its arrival in the papers that morning and remembered that he had heard in Hong Kong that Jacoby and Miss O'Shaughnessy had been seen together. That was when he had been trying to find her there, and he thought at first that she had left on the Paloma, though later he learned that she hadn't. Well, sir, when he saw the notice of arrival in the paper, he guessed just what had happened. She had given the bird to Jacoby to bring here for her. Jacoby did not know what it was, of course. Miss O'Shaughnessy is too discreet for that." He beamed at the girl and went on. "Mr. Cairo and Wilmer and I went to call on Captain Jacoby and were fortunate enough to arrive while Miss O'Shaughnessy was there. In many ways it was a difficult conference, but finally, by midnight, we had persuaded Miss O'Shaughnessy to come to terms, or so we thought. We then left the boat and set out for my hotel, where I was to pay Miss O'Shaughnessy and receive the bird. Well, sir, we mere men should have known better than to suppose ourselves capable of coping with her. En route, she and Captain Jacoby and the Falcon slipped completely through our fingers." He laughed merrily. "By Gad, sir, it was neatly done." Spade looked at the girl. Her eyes, large and dark with pleading, met his. He asked Gutman, "You touched off the boat before you left?" "Not intentionally, no, sir," the fat man replied, "though I dare say we, or Wilmer at least, were responsible for the fire. He had been out trying to find the Falcon while the rest of us were talking in the cabin and no doubt was careless with matches." "What about Jacoby's shooting?" asked Spade. "Well, sir, we dashed around town all day trying to find them, and we found them late this afternoon. We weren't sure at first that we'd found them. All we were sure of was that we'd found Miss O'Shaughnessy's apartment. But when we listened at the door, we heard them moving around inside, so we were pretty confident we had them and rang the bell. When she asked us who we were and we told her through the door, we heard a window going up. We knew what that meant, of course, so Wilmer hurried downstairs as fast as he could, and when he turned into the alley, he ran right plumb smack into Captain Jacoby, running away with the Falcon under his arm. That was a difficult situation to handle, but Wilmer did every bit as well as he could. He shot Jacoby more than once, but Jacoby was too tough to either fall or drop the Falcon, and he was too close for Wilmer to keep out of his way. He knocked Wilmer down and ran on, and this was in broad daylight, you understand, in the afternoon. When Wilmer got up, he could see a policeman coming up from the block below, so he had to give it up. Well, sir, there we were, stumped again. Miss O'Shaughnessy had opened the door for Mr. Cairo and me after she had shut the window behind Jacoby, and she—" He broke off to smile at a memory. "We persuaded— that is the word, sir— her to tell us that she had told Jacoby to take the Falcon to you. It seemed very unlikely that he'd live to go that far, even if the police didn't pick him up, but that was the only chance we had, sir. And so, once more, we persuaded Miss O'Shaughnessy to give us a little assistance. Persuaded her to phone your office in an attempt to draw you away before Jacoby got there, and we sent Wilmer after him. Unfortunately, it had taken us too long to decide and to persuade Miss O'Shaughnessy to—" The boy on the sofa groaned and rolled over on his side. His eyes opened and closed several times. The girl stood up and moved into the angle of table and wall again.
"Cooperate with us," Gutman concluded hurriedly. "And so you had the Falcon before we could reach you."
The boy put one foot on the floor, raised himself on an elbow, opened his eyes wide, put the other foot down, sat up and looked around. When his eyes focused on Spade, bewilderment went out of them. Spade, sitting on the corner of the table, swinging his legs carelessly, said, "Now listen, kid. If you come over here and start cutting up, I'm going to kick you in the face. Sit down and shut up and behave, and you'll last longer." The boy looked at Gutman. Gutman smiled benignly at him and said,
"Well, Wilma, I'm sorry indeed to lose you, and I want you to know that I couldn't be any fonder of you if you were my own son. But, well, by gad, if you lose a son, it's possible to get another, and there's only one Maltese Falcon."
Spade laughed. Gutman sighed benignly again. He said to Spade,
When you're young, you simply don't understand things."
Cairo had an arm around the boy's shoulders and was whispering to him. Spade grinned at Gutman and addressed Bridget O'Shaughnessy. "I think it'd be swell if you'd see what you can find us to eat in the kitchen."
"Surely," she said.
With Bridget out of the room, the fat man asked Spade confidentially if he intended sharing his loot with her.
Spade answered, "That's my business."
"It certainly is," the fat man agreed. "But," he hesitated, "I'd like to give you a word of advice."
"Go ahead."
"If you don't, I dare say you'll give her some money in any event, but if you don't give her as much as she thinks she ought to have, my word of advice is, be careful."
Spade's eyes held a mocking light. He asked, "Bad?"
"Bad," the fat man replied.
Spade grinned and began to roll a cigarette. Cairo, still muttering in the boy's ear, had put his arm around the boy's shoulders again. Suddenly the boy pushed his arm away and turned on the sofa to face the Levantine. The boy's face held disgust and anger. He made a fist of one small hand and struck Cairo's mouth with it. Cairo cried out as a woman might have cried and drew back to the very end of the sofa. The boy snarled, "Keep away from me," and put his face between his hands again. Cairo's cry had brought Bridget O'Shaughnessy to the door. Spade, grinning, jerked a thumb at the sofa and told her, "The course of true love."
At 6 o'clock, the boy awakened and sat up yawning. Gutman looked at his watch and questioned Spade.
"Can you get it now?"
"Give me another hour." Gutman nodded and went back to his book. At 7 o'clock, Spade went to the telephone and called Effie Perrine's number. "Hello, Mrs. Perrine? Yeah, this is Mr. Spade. Will you let me talk to Effie, please?" "Yes, it is." "Thanks." He whistled 2 lines of En Cuba softly. "Hello, Angel. Sorry to get you up." "Yes, very. Here's the plot. In our Holland box at the post office, you'll find an envelope addressed in my scribble. There's a Pickwick Stage parcel room check in it for the bundle we got yesterday. Will you get the bundle and bring it to me? PDQ? Yes, I'm home. That's the girl. Hustle. Bye." The street doorbell rang at 10 minutes of 8. Spade went to the telephone box and pressed the button that released the lock. Gutman put down his book and rose, smiling.
"You don't mind if I go to the door with you?" he asked.
"Okay," Spade told him. Gutman followed him to the corridor door. Spade opened it. Presently, Effie Perrine, carrying the brown-wrapped parcel, came from the elevator. Her boyish face was gay and bright, and she came forward quickly, almost trotting. After one glance, she did not look at Gutman. She smiled at Spade and gave him the parcel. He took it, saying, "Thanks a lot, lady. I'm sorry to spoil your day of rest, but this—" "It's not the first one you've spoiled," she replied, laughing.
and then, when it was apparent that he was not going to invite her in, asked, "Anything else?" He shook his head. "No, thanks." She said, "Bye-bye," and went back to the elevator. Spade shut the door and carried the parcel into the living room. Gutman's face was red and his cheeks quivered. Cairo and Bridget O'Shaughnessy came to the table as Spade put the parcel there. They were excited. The boy rose, pale and tense, but he remained by the sofa, staring under curling lashes at the others. Spade stepped back from the table, saying, "There you are." Gutman's fat fingers made short work of cord and paper and excelsior, and he had the black bird in his hands. "Ah," he said huskily, "now, after 17 years." His eyes were moist. Cairo licked his red lips and worked his hands together. The girl's lower lip was between her teeth. She and Cairo, like Gutman and like Spade and the boy, were breathing heavily. The air in the room was chilly and stale and thick with tobacco smoke. Gutman set the bird down on the table again and fumbled at a pocket. "It's it," he said, "but we'll make sure." Sweat glistened on his round cheeks. His fingers twitched as he took out a gold pocket knife and opened it. Cairo and the girl stood close to him, one on either side. Spade stood back a little where he could watch the boy as well as the group at the table. Gutman turned the bird upside down and scraped an edge of its base with his knife. Black enamel came off in tiny curls, exposing blackened metal beneath. Gutman's knife blade bit into the metal, turning back a thin, curved shaving. The inside of the shaving and the narrow plane its removal had left had the soft gray sheen of lead. Gutman's breath hissed between his teeth. His face became turgid with hot blood. He twisted the bird around and hacked at its head. There, too, the edge of his knife bared lead. He let knife and bird bang down on the table while he wheeled to confront Spade. "It's a fake," he said hoarsely. Spade's face had become somber. His nod was slow, but there was no slowness in his hands going out to catch Bridget O'Shaughnessy's wrist. He pulled her to him and grasped her chin with his other hand, raising her face roughly. "All right," he growled into her face. "You've had your little joke. Now tell us about it." She cried, "No, Sam, no. This is the one I got from Kemidov. I swear." Joel Cairo thrust himself between Spade and Gutman and began to emit words in a shrill, spluttering stream. That's it. It was the Russian. I should have known. What a fool we thought him, and what fools he made of us." Tears ran down the Levantine's cheeks, and he danced up and down. "You bungled it," he screamed at Gutman. "You and your stupid attempt to buy it from him. You fat fool. You let him know it was valuable, and he found out how valuable and made a duplicate for us. No wonder we had so little trouble stealing it. No wonder he was so willing to send me off around the world looking for it. You imbecile! You bloated idiot!" He put his hands to his face and blubbered. Gutman's jaw sagged. He blinked vacant eyes. Then he shook himself and was, by the time his bulbs had stopped jouncing, again a jovial fat man. "Come, sir," he said good-naturedly. "There's no need of going on like that. Everybody errs at times, and you may be sure this is every bit as severe a blow to me as to anyone else. Yes, that is the Russian's hand, there's no doubt of it. Well, sir, what do you suggest? Shall we stand here and shed tears and call each other names? Or shall we—" He paused, and his smile was a cherub's. "Go to Constantinople." Cairo took his hands from his face, and his eyes bulged. He stammered, "You are—" Amazement, coming with full comprehension, made him speechless. Gutman patted his fat hands together. His eyes twinkled. His voice was a complacent, throaty purring. "For 17 years I have wanted that little item and have been trying to get it. If I must spend another year on the quest, well, sir, that will be an additional expenditure in time of only—" His lips moved silently as he calculated 5 15/17%. The Levantine giggled and cried, "I go with you." Spade suddenly released the girl's wrist and looked around the room. The boy was not there. Spade went into the passageway. The corridor door stood open. Spade made a dissatisfied mouth, shut the door, and returned to the living room. He leaned against the doorframe and looked at Gutman and Cairo. He looked at Gutman for a long time, sourly. Then he spoke, mimicking the fat man's throaty purr. "Well, sir, I must say you're a swell lot of thieves." Gutman chuckled. "We've little enough to boast about, and that's a fact, sir," he said. "But, well, we're none of us dead yet, and there's not a bit of use thinking the world's come to an end just because we've run into a little setback." He then turned to Spade. "I'll have to ask you for that envelope, sir." Spade did not move. His face was wooden. He said, "I held up my end. You got the dingus. It's your hard luck, not mine, that it wasn't what you wanted." "Now, come, sir," Gutman said persuasively. "We've all failed, and there's no reason for expecting any one of us to bear the brunt of it." And he brought his right hand from behind him. In the hand was a small pistol, an ornately engraved and inlaid affair of silver and gold and mother-of-pearl. "In short, sir, I must ask you to return my $10,000. Spade's face did not change. He shrugged and took the envelope from his pocket. He started to hold it out to Gutman, hesitated, opened the envelope, and took out a $1,000 bill. He put that bill into his trousers pocket. He tucked the envelope's flap in over the other bills and held them out to Gutman. "That'll take care of my time and expenses," he said. Gutman, after a little pause, imitated Spade's shrug and accepted the envelope. He said, "Now, sir, we will say goodbye to you unless," the fat puffs around his eyes crinkled, "you care to undertake the Constantinople expedition with us. You don't? Well, sir, frankly, I'd like to have you along. You're a man to my liking, a man of many resources and nice judgment. Because we know you're a man of nice judgment, we know we can say goodbye with every assurance that you'll hold the details of our little enterprise in confidence. You're too shrewd not to recognize that, sir." "I understand that," Spade replied. "I was sure you would. I'm also sure that now there's no alternative. You'll somehow manage the police without a fall guy." "I'll make out all right," Spade replied. "I was sure you would. Well, sir, the shortest farewells are the best. Adieu." He made a portly bow. "And to you, Miss O'Shaughnessy, adieu. I leave you the rara avis on the table as a little memento." For all of 5 minutes after the outer door had closed behind Caspar Gutman and Joel Cairo, Spade, motionless, stood staring at the knob of the open living-room door. He had not looked at Bridget O'Shaughnessy, who stood by the table looking with uneasy eyes at him. He picked up the telephone and called a number. "Hello, is Sergeant Paulhouse there? Will you call him, please? This is Samuel Spade." He stared into space, waiting. "Hello, Tom. I've got something for you." "Yes, plenty. Here it is. Thursby and Jacoby were shot by a kid named Wilmer Cook." He described the boy minutely. He described Gutman. "That fellow Cairo you met here is in with them, too." "Yes, that's it. Gutman's staying at the Alexandria, Suite 12C, or was. They've just left here and they're blowing town, so you'll have to move fast, but I don't think they're expecting a pinch. There's a girl in it, too, Gutman's daughter." He described Rhea Gutman. "Watch yourself when you go up against the kid. He's supposed to be pretty good with the gun." "That's right. Step on it, and good luck to you." Spade slowly replaced receiver on prong, telephone on shelf. He filled his deep chest with air. Bridget O'Shaughnessy let her breath out in a little laughing gasp. Spade, face to face with her, very close to her, hard of jaw and eye, spoke. "They'll talk when they're nailed about us. We're sitting on dynamite, and we've only got minutes to get set for the police. Give me all of it, fast. Gutman sent you and Cairo to Constantinople?" She started to speak, hesitated, and bit her lip. He put a hand on her shoulder. "God damn you, talk," he said. "I'm in this with you, and you're not going to gum it. Talk. He sent you to Constantinople?" Yes, he sent me. I met Joe there and asked him to help me. Then we..." "Wait. You asked Cairo to help you get it from Kemidov?" "Yes." "For Gutman?" She hesitated again, squirmed under the hard, angry glare of his eyes, swallowed, and said, "No, not then. We thought we would get it for ourselves." "All right. Then?" "Oh, I began to be afraid that Joe wouldn't play fair with me, so I asked Floyd Thursby to help me." "And he did. Well?" "Well, we got it and went to Hong Kong." "With Cairo? Or had you ditched him before that?" "Yes. We left him in Constantinople, in jail, something about a check." "Something you fixed up to hold him there?" She looked shamefacedly at Spade and whispered, "Yes." "Right. Now, you and Thursby are in Hong Kong with the bird." "Yes, and then I didn't know him very well. I didn't know whether I could trust him. I thought it would be safer. Anyway, I met Captain Jacoby, and I knew his boat was coming here, so I asked him to bring a package for me, and that was the bird. I wasn't sure I could trust Thursby, or that Joe, or somebody working for Gutman might not be on the boat we came on, and that seemed the safest plan." "All right. And you and Thursby caught one of the fast boats over. Then what?" Then I was afraid of Gutman. I knew he had people, connections everywhere, and he'd soon know what we had done, and I was afraid Gutman would find me, or find Floyd and buy him over. That's why I came to you and asked you to watch him for—" He said, "You wanted to get him out of the way before Jacoby came with the loot. You told him he was being shadowed," Spade said confidently. "Miles hadn't many brains, but he wasn't clumsy enough to be spotted the first night." "I told him, yes. When we went out for a walk that night, I pretended to discover Mr. Archer following us and pointed him out to Floyd." She sobbed. "But please believe me, Sam, that I wouldn't have done it if I'd thought Floyd would kill him. I thought he'd be frightened into leaving the city. I didn't for a minute think he'd shoot him like that." Spade smiled wolfishly with his lips, but not at all with his eyes. He said, "If you thought he wouldn't, you were right, Angel." The girl's upraised face held utter astonishment. Spade said, "Thursby didn't shoot him." Incredulity joined astonishment in the girl's face. Spade said, "Miles hadn't many brains, but Christ, he had too many years' experience as a detective to be caught like that by the man he was shadowing, up a blind alley with his gun tucked away on his hip and his overcoat buttoned. Not a chance. He was as dumb as any man ought to be, but he wasn't quite that dumb." He ran his tongue over the inside of his lips and said, "But he'd have gone up there with you, Angel, as if he was sure nobody else was up there. You were his client, so he would have had no reason for not dropping the shadow on your say-so, and if you caught up with him and asked him to go up there, he'd have gone. He was just dumb enough for that. He'd have looked you up and down and licked his lips and gone, grinning from ear to ear. And then you could have stood as close to him as you liked in the dark and put a hole through him with the gun you had got from Thursby that evening." Bridget O'Shaughnessy looked at him with terrified eyes and cried, Don't talk to me like that, Sam. You know I didn't. You know—" "Will you stop it?" he demanded in a low, impatient voice. "This isn't the spot for the schoolgirl act. Listen to me. The pair of us are sitting under the gallows." He took hold of her wrists. "Why did you shoot him?" She pulled his head further down until her cheek was against his cheek and whispered, "I knew Floyd wouldn't be easily frightened, but I thought that if he knew somebody was shadowing him, either he'd— Oh, I can't say it, Sam." She clung to him, sobbing. Spade said, "You thought Floyd would tackle him and one or the other of them would go down. If Thursby was the one, then you were rid of him. If Miles was, then you could see that Floyd was caught and you'd be rid of him. That it?" Something like that." "And when you found that Thursby didn't mean to tackle him, you borrowed the gun and did it yourself. Right?" "Yes, though not exactly." "But exactly enough. And you had that plan up your sleeve from the first. You thought Floyd would be nailed for the killing." I thought they'd hold him at least until after Captain Jacoby had arrived with the Falcon, and you didn't know then that Gutman was here hunting for you, and you didn't suspect that, or you wouldn't have shaken your gunman. You knew Gutman was here as soon as you heard Thursby had been shot. Then you knew you needed another protector, so you came back to me. Right?" "Yes, but, oh, sweetheart, it wasn't only that. I would have come back to you sooner or later. From the first instant I saw you, I knew," Spade said tenderly. "You angel. Well, if you get a good break, you'll be out of San Quentin in 20 years, and you can come back to me then." She took her cheek away from his, drawing her head far back to stare up without comprehension at him. He was pale. He said tenderly, "I hope to Christ they don't hang you, precious, by that sweet neck." He slid his hands up to caress her throat. In an instant she was out of his arms, back against the table, crouching, both hands spread over her throat. Her face was wild-eyed, haggard. Her dry mouth opened and closed. She said in a small, parched voice, "You're not—" She could get no other words out. His voice was soft, gentle. He said, "I'm going to send you over. The chances are you'll get off with life. That means you'll be out again in 20 years. You're an angel. I'll wait for you." He cleared his throat. "If they hang you, I'll always remember you." She dropped her hands and stood erect. She smiled back at him gently. "Don't, Sam. Don't say that, even in fun. Oh, you frightened me for a moment. I really thought you do such wild and unpredictable things that—" Spade laughed. His yellow-white face was damp with sweat, and though he held his smile, he could not hold softness in his voice. He croaked, "Don't be silly. You're taking the fall. One of us has got to take it after the talking those birds will do. They'd hang me, sure. You're likely to get a better break." "Well?" But, Sam, you can't. Not after what we've been to each other. You can't." "Like hell I can't." She took a long, trembling breath. "You've been playing with me, only pretending you cared, to trap me like this. You didn't care at all. You don't love me." "I think I do," Spade said. "What of it?" The muscles holding his smile in place stood out like whales. "I'm not Thursby. I'm not Jacoby. I won't play the sap for you." Bridget O'Shaughnessy blinked her tears away. She stood looking him in the eyes, straight and proud. "You called me a liar," she said. "Now you're lying. You're lying if you say you don't know down in your heart that in spite of anything I've done, I love you." Spade made a short, abrupt bow. "Maybe I do," he said. "What of it? I can't help you now, and I wouldn't if I could." She put a hand on his hand on her shoulder. "Don't help me then," she whispered. "But don't hurt me. Let me go away, now." "No," he said. "I'm sunk if I haven't got you to hand over to the police when they come. That's the only thing that can keep me from going down with the others." "You won't do that for me?" "I won't play sap for you." "Don't say that, please." She took his hand from her shoulder and held it to her face. "Why must you do this to me, Sam? Surely Mr. Archer wasn't as much to you as—" "Miles," Spade said hoarsely, "was a louse. I found that out the first week we were in business together, and I meant to kick him out as soon as the year was up. You didn't do me a damn bit of harm by killing him." "Then what?" Spade pulled his hand out of hers. He no longer either smiled or grimaced. His wet yellow face was set hard and deeply lined. His eyes burned madly. He said, "Listen, this isn't a damn bit of good. You'll never understand me, but I'll try once more and then we'll give it up. Listen, when a man's partner is killed, he's supposed to do something about it. It doesn't make any difference what you thought of him. He was your partner and you're supposed to do something about it. Then it happens we're in the detective business. Well, when one of your organization gets killed, it's bad business to let the killer get away with it. It's bad all around. Bad for that one organization, bad for every detective everywhere. Third, I'm a detective, and expecting me to run criminals down and then let them go free is like asking a dog to catch a rabbit and let it go. It can be done all right, and sometimes it is done, but it's not the natural thing. The only way I could have let you go was by letting Gutman and Cairo and the kid go. That's—" "You're not serious," she said. "You don't expect me to think that these things you're saying are sufficient reason for sending me to the—" "Wait till I'm through and then you can talk. Fourth, No matter what I wanted to do now, it would be absolutely impossible for me to let you go without having myself dragged to the gallows with the others. Next, I've no reason in God's world to think I can trust you, and if I did this and got away with it, you'd have something on me that you could use whenever you happen to want to. That's 5 of them. The 6th would be that since I've also got something on you, I couldn't be sure you wouldn't decide to shoot a hole in me someday. 7th, I don't even like the idea of thinking that there might be 1 chance in 100 that you'd played me for a sucker. And 8th, but that's enough. All those on one side, maybe some of them are unimportant, I won't argue about that. But look at the number of them. Now on the other side, we've got what? All we've got is the fact that maybe you love me and maybe I love you.
You know, she whispered, whether you do or not.
I don't. It's easy enough to be nuts about you, he said. He looked hungrily from her hair to her feet and up to her eyes again. But I don't know what that amounts to. Does anybody ever? But suppose I do. What of it? Maybe next month I won't. I've been through it before, when it lasted that long. Then what? Then I'll think I played the sap. And if I did it and got sent over, then I'd be sure I was the sap. Well, if I send you over, I'll be sorry as hell. I'll have some rotten nights. But that'll pass. He took her by the shoulders and bent her back, leaning over her. If that doesn't mean anything to you, forget it and we'll make it this. I won't because all of me wants to, and wants to say to hell with the consequences and do it, and because, God damn you, you've counted on that with me the same as you counted on that with the others.
She whispered, if you loved me, you'd need nothing.
Spade set the edges of his teeth together and said through them, I won't play the sap for you. She put her mouth to his, slowly, her arms around him, and came into his arms. She was in his arms when the doorbell rang. Spade, his left arm around Bridget O'Shaughnessy, opened the corridor door. Lieutenant Dundee, Detective Sergeant Tom Paulhouse, and 2 other detectives were there. Spade said, Hello, Tom. Get them? Paulhouse said, Got them. Swell. Come in. Here's another one for you. Spade pressed the girl forward. She killed Miles, and I've got some exhibits. The boy's guns, one of Cairo's, a black statuette that all the hell was about. He looked at Dundee, drew his brows together, leaned forward to peer into the lieutenant's face, and burst out laughing. What in hell's the matter with your little playmate, Tom? He looks heartbroken. He laughed again. I bet by God when he heard Gutman's story he thought he had me at last. Cut it out, Sam, Tom grumbled. We didn't think. Like hell he didn't, Spade said merrily. He came up here with his mouth watering. I thought you'd have sense enough to know I'd been stringing Gutman. Cut it out, Tom grumbled again, looking uneasily sidewise at his superior. Anyways, we got it from Cairo. Gutman's dead. The kid had just finished shooting him up when we got there. Spade nodded. He ought to have expected that, he said. Effie Perrine put down a newspaper and jumped out of Spade's chair when he came into the office at a little after 9 o'clock Monday morning. He said, Morning, Angel.
Is that what the papers have, right? She asked.
Yes, ma'am.
The girl's brown eyes were peculiarly enlarged, and there was a queer twist to her mouth. She stood beside him, stared down at him. He raised his head and grinned. He said mockingly, So much for woman's intuition. Her voice was as queer as the expression on her face. You did that, Sam? To her? He nodded. Your Sam's a detective. He looked sharply at her. He put his arm around her waist, his hand on her hip. She did kill Miles, Angel, he said gently. Offhand, like that. He snapped the fingers of his other hand. She escaped from his arm as if it had hurt her. Don't, please, don't touch me, she said brokenly. I know you're right. You're right. But don't touch me now. Not now. Spade's face became pale as his collar. The corridor door's knob rattled.
Effie Perrine turned quickly and went into the outer office, shutting the door behind her. When she came in again, she shut it behind her. She said in a small, flat voice, "Iva is here." Spade, looking down at his desk, nodded almost imperceptibly. "Yes," he said and shivered. "Well, send her in."